welcome to SciShow Tangents, the lightly competitive knowledge showcase starring some of the geniuses that make the YouTube series SciShow happen. This week, as always, I'm joined by Stefan
Hello.
Chen.
Welcome.
How you doing, bud?
I'm all right.
What's your tagline?
Ooh, I'm real busy like a bee. Buzz, buzz. I don't know.
That's great. I loved it.
Why was it so menacing?
Sam Schultz is also here.
Good day, mate.
Oh, good one. What's your favorite marsupial?
There's only like 4 of them.
That's not
There's
true.
so many marsupials.
There's all the mammals.
Kangaroo.
It's like
Smaller kangaroo, kind of bigger kangaroo, koala, and then a bunch of wallabies that all kind of
Do you know
the
the
same.
possum is a marsupial?
Yeah.
What's the one we got?
That
We
one's
get
maybe
that
my
one.
favorite. I like that
Really?
one. I like
Oh.
them. They're cute. I think they're
Yeah.
cute. I like that they're cute and then really scary. Both
Yeah,
in one
they have
package.
terrible insides of their mouths.
Yeah.
What's your tagline?
Roast beefy weefy.
Oh,
Whoa.
I don't like it at all.
God.
Ceri Riley is also here.
I am.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm wearing a vacation shirt today.
You do. It does look like it's time for vacation.
Yeah.
What's your tagline, Ceri?
Buckle up, kids.
Ooh.
Ooh, it's time
Buzz,
to go.
buzz.
And I'm Hank Green, and my tagline is 100 per Saligator. Every week here on SciShow Tangents, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with the facts about science. We're playing for glory, and we're also keeping score and awarding Hank Bucks from week to week. So, we do what we can to stay on topic, but the podcast is called Tangents, and if your tangent is deemed unworthy, we'll force you to give up one of your Hank Bucks. And as always, we're going to introduce this week's topic with the traditional science poem. This week, it's from me. Long organic polymers of high molecular weight, massive chains of atoms, twisty, curved, or straight, sometimes created from fossil fuels, sometimes from agriculture. It's a useful and convenient part of our disposable culture. We use it every day. Of course, as Barbie said, life in plastic is fantastic as long as we're not dead.
That's the end.
That's the
Wow.
Is that what
Guess it
Barbie
really has
said?
to be the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
life in plastic is fantastic.
As long
Life
as we're
in
not dead?
I added that
Oh,
part.
okay.
Yeah,
was like,
because,
that doesn't-
plastics do have their downsides, and I don't want them to... I don't know. I feel like we worry a lot about plastics. It's like, the ocean's clogged with plastic. I'm like,
It's there, but small.
yeah. It's a
Oh.
big ocean. There
Okay.
are bad areas,
So it's fine.
but there's not like a
Everything's
Texas-sized island of plastic, which is the impression I get sometimes.
I thought there was.
No.
No.
Well, then what are we worried about?
I mean, there is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
What's
It
that?
exists.
It's...
Microplastics mostly.
Yeah. You
That's
can't
like
Yeah,
a
there-
Texas-sized area where there's a slightly higher concentration of
Right.
microplastic in the water.
Yeah, or like it's much higher than you would like,
Right.
but you can't like walk on it.
Oh, I
But
thought
it's-
it was just like rubber duckies and all kinds of stuff just floating out there.
Well, that's the other thing is that like the plastic in the ocean is mostly fishing nets, and that's also the most concerning piece of plastic because like it's designed to catch
Catch
fish.
fish in it.
But we do have too much plastic. It does last forever, and we should stop drinking out of disposable containers.
I agree with.
Yeah.
Seems like people were so close to not doing that anymore, and that's kind of relapsed to me at least.
Which direction were we going where we stopped drinking
It seemed
soda?
like people were thinking more about like don't use plastic water bottles,
Right.
But now it like
It's right out.
yeah, nobody cares anymore except
Sarah's
Sarah
got
with
your
her,
analogy
with
right
her
there.
analogy.
What's plastic, Ceri?
You did a pretty good job defining it in the poem because it is a organic compound that's often a long polymer chain.
Okay, we got to unpack some things here. What's an organic compound?
So it's a carbon-containing compound, and they can be synthetic or semi-synthetic. So they can be made from just man-made materials like chemicals, or they can be made from like structural compounds that we find in nature and that we react with one another, like cellulose.
Is there any purely natural plastic? Like rubber from rubber trees?
This is where the definition gets a little fuzzy for me because I'm not a materials scientist.
Sure.
It seems like rubber is not plastic.
Oh, okay.
Because plastic's main property is plasticity, so that it deforms irreversibly. But rubber's main property is elasticity, which means it deforms and then snaps back into its original shape.
Okay.
And so rubbers can be mixed with plastics to form different compounds, but they are two like ends of a
Right.
material science.
And now it's time for... One of our panelists has prepared 3 science facts for us, but only one of those facts is true, and the rest of us have to guess or know which one is the real fact. And if we get it right, we get the Hank Buck. And if not, Ceri gets the Hank Buck. Ceri, it's time for you to try and fool us.
Okay. Semi-synthetic plastics have been around for a while, like how celluloid film can be traced back to the sugar polymer cellulose from plants. If you can get a substance to polymerize through chemical reactions and have plasticity, you've basically made a plastic. So I guess I am contradicting myself already.
Okay.
So, which of these proteins was historically used to make a plastic? Number 1, casein from milk to try and make erasable whiteboards instead of black chalkboards.
Okay, gross.
2, hemoglobin from animal blood to make jewelry beads that oxidize to be a deep red hue over time.
Ooh.
Fake.
Or 3, convulsin from snake venom to make exceptionally strong but expensive plastics used in handguns for decoration and functionality.
Whoa, convulsin?
Yeah.
Ooh,
That sounds
convulsin.
bad.
With an X. Convulxin.
Ooh,
Oh.
that's
Sounds
a
like-
terrible one.
Sounds like something in snake venom.
Definitely in snake venom. Don't put that inside of you.
No, venomy.
I've heard of that protein in milk.
Yeah, that's definitely
milk is
protein.
white.
Milk is white.
Whiteboards are also white, which makes me think it's a lie.
That's misleading.
The
That's a
connections,
little misleading.
that seems like one of those things where you're just trying to play on my biases, my psychological biases.
Yeah. I guess I'm not sure if the trick is what it was made into or if it exists.
Okay. Hemoglobin turned it, it's just a very complicated protein, hemoglobin. It seems like it would be a difficult thing to polymerize is my main concern with that one.
Is it easier to polymerize simple things?
Well, most polymers are really simple.
Huh. Well, does hemoglobin is that the part that has the iron?
Yeah. So hemoglobin is a complex of different proteins, like 4 different proteins around the sort of iron-containing part of
Okay. See, again that seems like a lie. Because then it's like, okay, the hemoglobin's got the iron, and then you make a bead and it oxidizes like iron does.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. Trying to trick me.
Yeah, I mean, making snake venom into guns also feels...
That feels just weird. So it must be true.
It feels kind of like the same kind of lie where it's
Really?
like, it's white and it's a whiteboard. It's a snake and it's a gun. It's going to kill you and it's still going to kill you.
Okay.
You see? And it's blood and it's blood-like object to bead. I'm leaning toward casein making whiteboards.
Me too.
Huh.
I think that one, because I know casein is like a thing that they tried to make into stuff.
I'm going to go with the snake venom one.
It's going with snake
I'm
venom.
going to go with my own gut. I'm not going to listen to these boneheads over here.
Even though Sam said he knew the answer. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stefan. Sam did know the answer. And the snake venom one is just the one that I completely made up because I thought it'd be cool.
Guns and snakes.
Yeah.
Guns and snakes.
Like, if you can put venom into anything, what would rich people buy? A fancy gun.
Yeah. So wait, did they try to make blood into products, like plastic products?
So, yeah, there was a thing called hemocyte in 1885, which was apparently animal blood, which they didn't have a use for, mixed with sawdust. And then this article in whatever old newspaper I found was not very specific. It said some chemicals.
Sure.
And they mushed it together and really squeezed it to make it compact. And they would make like doorknobs out of it. They would make roller skating wheels out of
the
it.
hell?
Whoa.
Blood
What's this stuff
knobs.
called?
Hemocyte, HEMACITE. It was like a tough material. I don't think it would be considered a plastic necessarily, depending
Right.
on what.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it had. It was a polymer or anything. It was just like very squished together wood with blood as a binder.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, apparently, someone took 100% cow's blood and also put it under a lot of pressure and dried it out and made it into some sort of compound. So like people have turned blood into solid objects before.
Nice.
Oh,
Can I do that? Can Catherine and I make blood gems and wear them on each other's fingers?
Literal blood diamonds, yes.
Yeah.
But milk plastics, totally a thing, which is very weird to me.
still don't believe it.
Yeah, it's weird to polymerize a protein, man.
Yeah. It was first created in around 1897 and patented in 1899 when a German material scientist or printing press owner, something like that. It was developed as an alternative to blackboards. So they were like, what can we do to make a whiteboard, basically?
Right.
But it didn't end up being good for whiteboards, but it was fairly easy to make. as far as synthetic plastics go at the time. It was easy to color whatever you wanted. And so it became a staple in like jewelry and other, like it was basically anything you could think of for a cheap plastic at the time.
Mhm.
Okay.
People used it as that. And it became popular when Coco Chanel, I think, used what is called Galalith or casein plastic.
Mhm.
That's the name of it. In an ad, like in a clothing ad. And people were like, oh, milk plastic is fashionable.
Okay, sure. Next up, we're going to take a short break, and then it's time for the Fact Off. Hello and welcome back. Hank Buck totals for the episode thus far. Sarah, you have 1. Sam, you have 1. Stefan, you have 0. And I have 2 because I did a poem.
This
So,
is my comeback time.
well, I guess, sure. Yeah,
Possibly.
you can come back because it's time for the Fact Off, in which 2 of our panelists, this week Stefan and Sam, are going to present me and Ceri science facts in an attempt to blow our minds. And our minds are sturdy, so you have to work hard. We each have a Hank Buck to award the fact that we like the most, but if we hate them both, we can throw them away and burn them in the fire. And to decide who goes first, we're going to go by which one of you has the most credit cards on you right now.
Ooh, on us
On
right
me?
now?
Yeah.
I don't carry all of mine with me.
I have a debit card. Does that count?
It's just loose in your pocket. That's
I
why.
like to live dangerously.
Yeah. How many you got?
3.
3. Is one of them a debit card?
It's 5, including debit cards.
Wow. You've got
I've-
5 on
I have
you?
2 debit
What?
cards, and I have an Amazon card, and a Target card, and a Costco card.
Oh, I see. You're loaded down with plastic.
got it.
So give me your facts.
Let's do it. So I think we've talked about before on the show the like different ways that bees are affected by the presence of humans, like with colony collapse disorder, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But some species of bees, which I didn't know for a long time, are solitary.
Mhm.
So they don't have hives or make a bunch of honey and honeycomb and all that. In those species, each individual female bee has to construct its own nest. And it seems like a lot of the time they like to find like little long, narrow, like tube holes to do that in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so some of these species are also leaf cutter bees that have really strong like mandibles that let them cut little sections of leaves out, and then they bring those back to their tube and like line the walls and make a little nest. And so in the last 10 years, what we've been seeing is that various leaf cutter bees are incorporating pieces of plastic into the nest construction.
Okay.
So instead of cutting out little bits of leaf, they'll cut out a bit of like a plastic bag or something like that. So
Sure.
it's still like soft and thin, pliable plastic, but then they incorporate that into the lining for their nest cells. There was a 2019 report that was the first time that they'd seen the entire nest constructed out of plastic.
Wow.
They were even stealing little bits of polyurethane-based sealants off of buildings to like glue the
So, like,
leaves
the
together.
caulk between
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all windows.
From like material to like sealant, like everything that they were using was plastic based. And they just don't really know if it's good or bad yet, but
Yeah.
it could be a sign that like they're just really adaptable and like are grabbing whatever's there
Right.
and they can make it work. But it could mean that like the plants that they normally use for that sort of thing are not around as much. They did say that it didn't seem like the best building material because they found only 3 cells total in this one nest, and one had a dead larva in it, and one seemed to have worked fine, and then the other one wasn't finished. So not the best track record there. Also a pretty small sample, but
Right. Yeah.
but in other papers they had noted that like they'd seen bees nesting in straws.
Okay.
And that protected them from parasites because they can't penetrate the straw.
Oh.
But then they also lose most of the larvae to mold because it can't
yeah.
get rid of moisture. So kind of
Right.
good,
So I
good
should
and bad,
not build a bee nest out of boba tea straws. Because that's
I
what
mean-
I had that thought.
you know, in a pinch, they might be able.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to speak for the bees. I'm not a representative
Who
of the
speaks
bee,
for the bees?
the alliance of bees. But yeah, so that's the fact is that they had a 100% plastic bee nest
Wow.
that they found.
Do you think the bees like the plastic? Like, there's some bees who think that
Yeah,
the plastic
they-
is the best.
They think that might be one of the possibilities too, is that there's some reason that they haven't figured out yet that the bees actually prefer
prefer it,
using
yeah.
the plastic.
They're like, this is great. It's super, like, it's not rotting. It's like
Yeah.
impenetrable, and I can do a better seal with this stuff than I can with leaves.
Mhm.
Keep those parasites
they
out.
they also mentioned that they've seen like birds lining their nests with cigarette butts because it keeps parasites out.
Oh my
Whoa.
God.
But it
Cool.
probably isn't great for the eggs and stuff in there. I
Sure.
don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
All right, if they like it or not. 'Cause
I
you
don't know if
speak
they
for
like
the
it.
Yeah,
I don't
'cause you don't
speak for
speak for
the
the
bees.
bees.
We covered this already.
Stefan, I need you to go interview the bees. Go find them.
Speak for the bees.
Well,
Knock on
I
the
am
bee
the
tubes.
Stefan. I speak for the bees.
Yes. Hello, my name is Stefan. May I interest you in
In
I
a
don't know.
boba tea straw.
Yeah.
God, I want a boba tea. Sam, what's your fact?
All right. So in America in the 1860s, billiards was a big honking deal. Billiards, but like pool in general, I think any form
Sure.
of pool. So there were thousands of pool halls across the country, but America's foremost billiard ball manufacturer, Phelan and Collender, had a big problem. Billiard balls were made out of ivory, and the
yeah.
tables and other accessories that were made for billiard balls took into account like how ivory moved, how it bounced, how heavy
Sure.
it was.
Mhm.
But ivory was incredibly expensive, and they were running out of people who were rich enough to be able to afford a set of billiard balls. They needed to come up with a cheaper solution fast, so they offered $10,000 in cash or $200,000 in today money to anybody who could come up with an alternative to ivory to use for these balls. So John Wesley Hyatt, who was a photo printer from Albany, and his brother Isaiah heard about this competition, and it just so happened that John had fairly recently acquired a patent from a British inventor named Alexander Parkes for a waterproofing agent that was made when Parkes realized that when a certain kind of developing agent dried, like a hard left behind thing, he had a lot of this stuff sitting around to dry. So they started messing around with it and figured out how to harden it and shape it. And they made their own ivory-free pool balls, and they dubbed the thing that they were made out of celluloid. Their new balls had a few problems that prevented them from actually winning the contest, though. Mainly was that they were kind of just really shitty.
They were not like ivory.
Yeah, they didn't bounce right. They didn't feel right. Nobody who played pool liked them, and the company would not give them the prize money for it. But they still set up a pool supply company, and they sold even worse versions of the balls that were just plaster that had a thin layer
Oh.
of the stuff on it.
So they're like, you don't like our balls? Fine.
We'll show you bad balls. But it seems like a lot of people out west bought them, but the lack of quality of the balls seems like a small issue compared with another problem, which is that celluloid is super flammable. So
Ooh, hot balls.
yeah, when the balls would hit together too hard, they would make a little explosion or like catch on fire.
That is a problem.
Yeah, not a huge explosion, but like loud enough that they were getting letters from people out west
Oh, yeah.
who own bars who said that when this would happen, the people in the bars would all draw their guns. So it wasn't great. Eventually, they pivoted celluloid into faux ivory products in general, like combs and buttons for clothes.
Okay.
But they also had the same problem where if you were like in the sun too long and they got too hot or something like that, they would burst into flames. And it killed a few people.
What?
And then eventually, of course, they started using celluloid for movie film reels, and that would also catch on fire and kill everybody in the theater.
Okay.
Occasionally that would happen too.
But it was like good enough. Though.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it was good enough that it was the first commercially successful form of plastic. And it also
okay.
probably kickstarted people trying to find forms of plastic that did not explode and would kill everybody. Yeah.
The celluloid brothers, were they like commercially successful? Like when we
I believe so.
started using celluloid film, like they made money off of that?
I think celluloid film came after them.
Okay.
Because I couldn't find anything that linked their company to making that.
Sure.
But I think celluloid fashion products were pretty successful, and they
so
were
like the
making
combs and
those.
stuff that like, and you have like a thing on your head, a barrette that just like you go outside for too long and your head catches on fire.
Yeah.
And that this is a bad thing. And did they feel bad?
It doesn't seem like anybody really felt that bad about it.
Human life.
Yeah.
It was the 1800s.
Yeah, and I think that their pool supply company was successful, even though they were making bad balls.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I
somebody-
mean, if you're making bad balls for way cheaper, and
Yeah.
the people out west, they don't know. They've never
They
used an
don't know.
ivory ball.
Yeah,
It's all brand new.
yeah.
And they're like, and it's great because sometimes they go pow, pow, pow.
It's fun. Right, fun.
Yeah. And then it bounces different when there's an explosion. Which isn't, that's an introduction of a new
That
element
does
of
sound-
play.
Yeah.
So,
It's
like,
more
if you really want the ball to move fast, you got to hit it extra hard, and then there's an
That's
explosion.
pool 2.
Yeah,
You got to
pool
add some
two.
more features to
Yeah.
pool 2.
Yeah.
So, we've got solitary bees constructing their nests entirely of plastic sometimes, but also more than sometimes partially out of plastic. And we've got Sam with explodey billiard balls from the 1860s that were so bad no one would use them, except that then they went on to be a commercially successful product that occasionally killed people.
Yeah.
I'm going to give my pink buck to Stefan because I didn't know about bees and plastics. And even though we're slowly destroying the earth, I like to think that there are some species out there that could maybe adapt. And so maybe they won't die of mold at some point, and they'll just be very dry bees and straws.
I'm going to give mine to Sam because I love weird science history and all of the stupid little directions we went on the way to getting to where we are now, even if it did make your head catch on fire.
Yeah.
Now it's time to Ask the Science Couch. We've got a question to be read to us by Sam for our Couch of Finely Honed Scientific Minds.
At SPath73 asks, what exactly is corn plastic?
I don't think that corn plastic is any one thing. So you can, once you got organic compounds, you can polymerize them in various ways. But I think that there's more than one way to turn corn into molecules from corn into a polymer. And sometimes you do that with the intent for it to be something that's easily, people are like, oh, that must be easier to compost. But not if you don't have that as a goal.
Right.
So it sort of depends on what you end up doing with it.
Is this a thing that because we talked about cellulose too, and is it a thing about a property of sugars that because that sugars are made up of these chains of things that makes it easier to make into a plastic, which is a chain of...
It has the carbon there. It's it has a bunch of organic compounds. A cellulose is a polymer. It's a polymer of sugar. But I think a lot of what happens is you break that down and you create ethanol or something like that. And that's sort of your feedstock for going into the biochemical process.
My other guess is that because cellulose is a structural polymer of glucose in the way that glycogen is less structural. It just exists as a storage unit. But cellulose is gives plant structure. So then it itself is a sturdier compound and then can add functional groups onto it or break it down or reassemble it. And it'll make something sturdy like plastic. Whereas if you took glycogen from our bodies, it would be floppy and a mess.
Oh, glycogen is trash.
Yes.
It's good at one thing.
It's a hot take. I don't even know glycogen.
Glycogen is fine. It's very good at the one thing it does, which is just store energy for quick availability in our bodies. But yeah, cellulose is very sturdy, very good at being sturdy. And then if you know how to do organic chemistry, you can do organic chemistry to it. I'm not sure how corn plastic actually happens. If you are using the sugar from the corn or if you're using the cellulose from the corn. It's probably both.
So the reading that I've done, corn is usually used to make one type of plastic called polylactic acid, which is made from fermented plant starch.
Okay.
So starch is another sugar polymer. There's cellulose and starch, and those are the two plant sugar polymers.
But you have to ferment it first?
So yeah, so starch is the other one. Cellulose is one of the structural plant sugar compounds. Starch is the other. And the fermentation is probably just the chemical reactions that you need to turn it into the plastic. I don't have specifics about that process. I don't know if it's proprietary or if I'm just not a chemist. So didn't dig into the research about that. And you can also make it from other plants besides corn. If you find starchy compounds, you can turn it into polylactic acid through this process. And benefits of corn plastic proponents of corn plastic say that it's carbon neutral because it's coming from plants that absorb carbon from the environment, and then we're turning it back into plastic that gets reintroduced into the environment again. Right. So it's the whole process, the cycle as a whole, rather than just generating trash.
Sure.
We're taking corn, which would have been trash at some point, or poop, and we're turning it into plastic that we then throw away. Or in an ideal world, compost to recycle it back.
And is this stuff, this polylactic acid, is it compostable?
It is compostable, but what is interesting is that it's only compostable in specific conditions, under specific conditions. What a Scientific American article looked into, they talked to people who actually do this kind of composting work. Polylactic acid will decompose into carbon dioxide and water in a controlled composting environment in fewer than 90 days. But what that means is they need to have microbes digesting it, not just worms, not just like a backyard composting thing.
Mm-hmm.
It has to reach 140 degrees for 10 consecutive days. And
Oh.
so it's like biodegradable, but there are only like between 100 and 150 facilities as of the writing time of this article that can compost things in this very specific industrial way to handle food processing waste or compostable waste in this way. And you can't just like compost
Can't just put them in your
yourself.
backyard.
Yeah. And like that is also a choice that you have to make, right? So like people have these corn cut plastics, but if they're thrown into landfills, there's no evidence that they'll degrade any faster than any other type of plastic.
Right.
So this has to be a very intentional change in the way that people use these single-use plastic objects. And so if you throw polylactic acid cup into a landfill, it's like,
Just throw any other plastic cup in the landfill?
yeah, and there's
Okay.
no benefit from corn plastic in that way.
What I will also say is apparently, so you can make a bunch of different plastics from corn, but now we, like, the thing corn plastic is polylactic acid. That's sort of like we've decided that that's what we're going to call polylactic acid is corn plastic. But it is not the only plastic you can make from corn, which is interesting.
How many plastics can you make from corn?
Well, you can make polyethylene from corn. So just normal polyethylene, but it's like from a different feedstock. And then you can make like, and I think that's true of various like existing plastics.
I guess that makes sense. Like if you break down corn enough, then you can get a
Right.
monomer
Exactly.
that you can then polymerize into something.
If you want to ask the Science Couch your questions, follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents, where we'll tweet out upcoming topics for our future episodes every week. Thank you to at Bridget McGann, at Cockodemonia, and everybody else who tweeted us your questions this week. Final, everybody laughing at Cockodemonia here in the
could be
studio.
Keiko.
It's Poop Demon. Let's be honest with ourselves. Final scores: Ceri 1, Sam 2, Stefan 1, Hank 2.
Yay!
Yay!
I co-win.
Hey, high
Yeah.
five with our feet. If you like this show and you want to help us out, you can do that by leaving a review wherever you listen. That helps us know what you like about the show. And also, we'll be looking at iTunes reviews for topic ideas for future episodes. Leave your ideas in our iTunes reviews. Second, you can tweet out your favorite moment from this episode. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, just tell people about us. And if you want to read more about any of our topics today, check out SciShowTangents.org to find links to all of our sources and probably some pictures of blood stuff made out of blood. Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Ceri Riley.
I've been Stefan Chin.
And I've been Sam Schultz.
SciShow Tangents is a co-production of Complexly and the lovely team at WNYC Studios. It's created by all of us and produced by Caitlin Hoffmeister and Sam Schultz, who also edits a lot of these episodes, along with Hiroka Matsushima. Our sound design is by Joseph Tuna Medish. Our social media organizer is Victoria Bongiorno, and we couldn't make any of this without our patrons on Patreon. Thank you. And remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted.
But one more thing. In 2018, a group of Australian scientists had 6 adults swallow the head of a Lego minifigure in order to figure out how long it would take for it to travel through their bodies. So first they established the participants' standard poop characteristics and habits before eating the Lego heads and formulated what they called the stool hardness and transit, or SHAT score. Then they took another SHAT score after it was in their bodies and traveling through their digestive systems. And then they measured the amount of time the Lego head spent in their subject systems with the found and retrieved time, or the fart score.
Oh, wow. my God.
They found no meaningful changes in the SHAT score before and after the eating of the head, and determined an average fart score of 1.71 days. And they concluded that basically you can eat Lego heads all day long and not suffer any negative
my.
repercussions from it.
I feel like my fart score would be lower than that.
Well,
But, you know,
you probably would have been filtered out of the
I'm an
participants.
outlier.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to SciShow Tangents, the lightly competitive knowledge showcase starring some of the geniuses that make the YouTube series SciShow happen. This week, as always, I'm joined by Stefan Chin. Stefan, what's your tagline?
I'm a cabbage.
Classy. Sam Schultz is also here today. Sam, what's your coffee order?
My coffee order, black. Well, gosh, black until recently. I started just drip. I don't drink. I only drink drip. I started putting cream and sugar in it. Now I just do cream though. Sugar seems too ostentatious.
Oh,
ostentatious.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big word for the normal way to drink coffee. Sam, what's your tagline?
Somebody get this freaking duck away from me.
Oh God, tell me about it. Ceri's here as well. Hi, Ceri Riley.
Hello.
Would you describe yourself more as classy or bougie?
I would say neither.
Is that a dichotomy? Is that a thing?
No, you can be both.
Okay.
That's the whole point of the song.
Oh, I don't know this song.
Oh, it's the TikTok song. I think I'm more ratchet than classy or bougie, probably.
Oh, no. You guys
The
are
way
all talking
that
about something I don't know. What song is this?
It's Megan Thee Stallion, Savage.
Oh, okay.
It's real hot on TikTok.
I at least know who that is.
Good. I don't actually know who that is. I just am on TikTok a lot. Ceri, what's your tagline?
Big leaf energy.
And I'm Hank Green. My tagline is banana combos.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Every week here on SciShow Tangents, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with science facts. We play for glory, but we also keep score. So it's not really for glory, it's for the win, and I'm losing. We do everything we can to stay on topic, but judging by previous conversations, we won't be good at that. So if the rest of the team deems your tangent unworthy, we'll force you to give up one of your Sam bucks. The good news is for me, I've given up, so I can tangent as much as I want. Now, as always, we introduce this week's topic with the traditional science poem, this week from Ceri.
A workout trope, the protein obsession, to grow your muscles into prized possessions. Get swole, drink shakes, get strong, eat beans. Load up your body with precious amines. But these little strings are in lots of things, folding and molding every offspring. From development proteins to photoxins and cones in eggs, hair, and meat, hormones in our bones. And lignin in wood that helps it grow strong, but prions, I fear, make things go wrong. The real puzzle of proteins, both big and small, is that proteins need proteins to exist at all. Chaperonins help fold and proteases break down, but these protein makers and breakers aren't just around. They have to be made, and that's what confounds me when it comes to studying life. It's basically just chance. I'm tired. Good night.
So our topic for the today is proteins, everyone. Proteins, the thing that makes us all up for the most part, certainly that make us all function. And I think that there's a fairly specific definition of a protein.
I'd love to hear it. I have no idea.
This is one of those episodes where I actually studied this in school, so I feel a great amount of pressure to get it correct because it's the chemistry-biology intersection. So proteins are also known as polypeptides because they are chains of amino acids bonded together. So they're chains of amino acids, which gives them like their primary structure, but then they have secondary and tertiary structures where they fold and twist and have internal bonding so that they form 3D structures. And protein folding is a huge problem in the field of science. It just like feels magical in some ways, like we can predict somewhat how proteins are going to fold, but not really. And their structure influences their function. So if they fold incorrectly or become unfolded, then it won't work like a protein should.
So if we could predict it, we'd be able to stop some things from happening or like make other things happen. Is that why we want to even try to predict it?
It'd be nice to be able to predict it because then if we were to want to create a shape, we could do that. If you want to create a protein to do something specific, then you could be like, oh, I know how this is going to fold up. Also, proteins can fold up in different ways. So like one protein can fold in multiple conformations. And if you make it in a lab, it might fold very differently than if it makes itself or if it is made in your body, by a ribosome.
Okay.
It's a big mess. And like the wild thing about proteins is how effective they are at their jobs. And the creation of them to do the work that they do is way beyond kind of where we're at right now. We're much better at sort of like finding proteins and like using them to do stuff than we are at creating proteins to do their remarkable work of creating stuff that we still cannot create. Like one of my things that I always go back to is like, we still don't know how to make wood. Trees do it. all day, every day, and they make so much wood, and it is amazing. Like, it's this amazingly useful thing. We have no idea how to make wood.
And in
We
fact,
cannot do that.
like to make proteins, we co-opt the systems of other microorganisms. So a lot of the time we stick a gene, like we understand genetic material enough to like cut and paste and do things like that with it. But we stick a gene into bacteria and then we're like, you live your life and just generate a bunch of this protein so I can have it, because we don't know how to just make that protein in a lab, which is so wild to me. It's like, well, you're going to do the labor for us because we just can't figure this puzzle out, and it's much easier to just trick you into making it.
The chemical systems that happen on Earth are so far beyond the chemical systems that like we use to create organic compounds. Like actually in a lab, like using organic chemistry rather than using biological systems to create stuff for us, really makes me feel like we kind of suck at chemistry because our bodies are way better at chemistry than we are.
So what's it mean? Does it come from Proteus, the first something?
Yeah, where did protein come from?
You're right, Sam. That's basically what comes. Protos first, and then plus -ene, which I did not look up the etymology of for some reason. Maybe thing. Word forming element. That's it. It's just a part of a word. So yeah,
Right.
it was like
It's a word
You gotta
forming
end it
element.
somehow.
We
You might
turned
as
this
well.
thing into a word.
yeah. It was like it is the first thing. And I think in Greek times, it was just used generically because they didn't have a specific understanding of biology. There was just like, there is something that is essential to life, and we're going to call it a proteus or something like that, or a protos. And then in 1838, the Dutch chemist Gerhard Mulder used the term protein in his paper to refer to specific substances in animals. And then I think from there on, the scientific community started narrowing it down as like, okay, what exactly is a protein? What essential compound are we going to call a protein? And then the rest is history.
And now it is time for one of our panelists has prepared 3 science facts for our education and enjoyment, but only one of those facts is true. The other 2 are fakes. The rest of us have to figure out either by deduction or wild guess which is the true fact. And if we do, we get a Sam buck. If not, then Stefan will get the Sam buck because Stefan has brought the facts today. You can play along at home at twitter.com/SciShow tangents, but wait until you've heard all of the facts before you vote. Stefan, what are our 3 facts?
These are 3 ways of exploring new protein structures. Number 1, inspired by Minecraft, a team of researchers created a 3D block-based protein game in which players could manipulate proteins using amino acid blocks. And in 2012, players successfully re-engineered an enzyme that is used in the production of vitamin B6. And by adding 13 amino acids, they made the enzyme 18 times as active.
That sounds like something people would do.
Number 2, a team translated protein sequences into music using a 20-tone musical scale that corresponds to the 20 standard amino acids that form proteins. And a neural network trained on this protein music was then able to quickly generate whole new protein variations that they could create and test the properties of.
That's fun. And just play them on a piano.
And then number 3, a team trying to create a new futuristic fabric that would be very elastic but also stronger than some metals studied whey protein, the stuff that you find in many protein powders, under X-ray light to discover how the proteins were combining to form fibers.
All right, so our 3 facts are, number 1, there is a Minecraft-inspired game that was used to re-engineer an enzyme that's used in the production of vitamin B6, and they were able to make it 18 times as active. Or number 2, researchers translated protein sequences into music and trained a neural network on that music to generate new protein variations. Or number 3, a team tried to create a strong, elastic fabric out of whey protein. Explain this to me. They're using whey protein, which I know as a thing that I can digest because they put it in food and they turned it into something I can wear.
You can wear food.
My bad, of course.
So a bunch of steaks together. Got a shirt.
How did they like re-engineer this somehow?
There's like a process that involves a lot of pressure, I think, that forms the fibers.
Are proteins the ones you can denature?
Yep.
They probably denature them.
They probably did. That's when you unfold them, basically.
When you
It's the
cook 'em
denaturing
up.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay.
frying an egg. So then they get all
Yeah.
clumpy with each other.
Right.
Number 2, did the song sound good at all?
Well, it is not familiar to listeners of Western music. Let's put it that way.
It would be a little bit all over the place because you just have 20 notes and like there's no, I don't know.
It's not like any
Mhm.
protein has to be next to any other protein, like in a sequence or anything, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so there are repeating patterns in proteins,
Huh.
but yeah, there's no particular reason why, like even why we assign them certain numbers. But you could make a song out of 20 notes.
Sure.
There's lots of songs with less than 20 notes.
There's only really 12 notes. They just repeat.
And I would believe anybody in Minecraft could do like literally anything. There's an infinite amount of free time.
Yeah, that is the trick. If you can get your science inside of Minecraft, all the children will do it for you.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm gonna go with the weird milk clothes.
I'm also going to go with milk clothes.
Oh gosh,
We're going in on it. Oh,
I think I'm going to go with the Minecraft one. I have infinite faith in Minecraft players.
I also have a lot of faith in Minecraft children, but the correct answer is the protein music.
what?
Nobody got it.
Stefan runs
Oh
away
my
with
God.
the lead.
It's a sweep. At this point, Hank, I think you should just try to hit 0 points by the end of the season. That
I'm
would be a
going
real
down.
accomplishment.
Get ready to hear everything I know.
So they translated different aspects of the proteins into different aspects of music. And I think they called it the amino acid scale. I guess like the amino acids are physically vibrating at certain frequencies. And so they could translate that into the pitches and then transposed it to within the human range of hearing. And then the secondary structure of the protein, which I think is, I mean, you could probably correct me, but I think has to do with how it's actually arranged in space, like in physical space, the shape of the proteins.
Mm-hmm.
That information was encoded as the volume of the notes and the duration. So some of the researchers were saying like they had listened to a bunch of this music and they were starting to be able to be like, oh, that sounds like an alpha helix or something. Like they could hear different physical structures.
Cool.
And as Ceri was mentioning, like protein structures are really complex and affect how proteins work. So they were trying to use music, something that humans are better at understanding sort of naturally, to help try to break down differences between the proteins and their variations and like protein families and stuff. And they were saying the neural network seems to understand like the code or recipe of how proteins are designed, but they can't like open up the AI and see what's actually going on. So that, but it does seem to work. So there is a protein game. I think there is a protein game based on Minecraft, but I don't know anything about that one. But there's another like citizen science project called Fold It, where the players are trying to fold proteins in different ways. And in 2012, they had the first like crowdsourced redesign of a protein. And it was an enzyme used in Diels-Alder reactions. I don't know what that means, but it's apparently used in the production of various things, which includes vitamin B6. And the original creator of that enzyme was like stuck on, he needed it to be more potent, but couldn't figure it out. And so the players of Fold It were able to make it 18 times more effective. The new futuristic fabric that would be very elastic, but also strong is just silk. That's what I was.
Oh.
There's a team that's working towards a process that would allow them to artificially produce silk, because right now you just have to use silkworms. But silk is super elastic and super strong. And so being able to produce it or mass produce it in the lab, I guess, would be useful. They took whey protein, or it's like a protein from cow's whey. And they knew that if they applied heat and acid to it, they could turn them into these little fibrils. And so I don't know if that counts as denaturing, but it changes the shape into like some kind of spaghetti. And then they found that different concentrations of the protein in their solution determined the properties of the fibrils. So like different lengths and thicknesses and straightnesses. And they were surprised to find that it was the shorter and thinner ones that turned into a better fiber. They found that the shorter ones were more maintained a more random orientation and were more curved. And that just helped them lock together with each other more. So they'll like thicker but straighter ones. It's like trying to hold a bunch of spaghetti together. Like there's nothing to lock onto, I guess. But they were able to make 5 millimeters of silk that was of medium quality. Now that they understand this whole process a little bit better, they're going to try to make better fibers. But I think they're not using whey protein for that. That was just for this part of the experiment to like figure out how it all works.
The music one sounded so fake. I'm mad.
Yeah, I had also heard recently somebody who was like translating like markets into music, and so I thought you were just riffing off of that.
Oh, like stock markets?
Yeah, yes. I don't know what good that does except to like freak you out. Yeah, I listened to like the last 6 months and it was unpleasant. All right, next up we're going to take a short break, then it'll be time for the fact off. Welcome back, everybody. Sam Buck totals. Hank and Sam coming in with nothing. Ceri's got one for the poem. Stefan raked it all in with 3 points during Truth or Fail. And now it is time for the fact off, where Sam and I have each brought facts to present to the others in an attempt to blow their minds. Ceri and Stefan each have a Sam Buck to award to the fact that they like the most. And to decide who's going to go first, we have a trivia question that is going to be read by someone to us.
Me. So, like we've been talking about, proteins can become thermally unstable and denature or unfold at temperatures outside of the range that cells live. For hyperthermophilic bacteria, though, that range is really high. So, what is the highest temperature in Celsius that hyperthermophilic bacteria have been observed to survive without becoming unstable?
Now I gotta learn Celsius real quick.
I think you know the important number in this situation.
What do you mean?
100?
Yeah. You know, there's the upper limit when water stops existing is 100.
Oh.
I'm going to go first since I've given Sam a hint now. And I'll say, 99?
Oh.
I don't know why you would think that a hint would help me in any way. How about 120?
Wow.
Ooh. The answer is 122 degrees Celsius.
No!
Which is, if by my calculations, 251.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
My God, that was amazing. All right, Sam, you want to go first or you want me to?
I think I want you to go first.
Okay, I will. So we've also talked a little bit about prions during this podcast, and we know what prion diseases are, but just to explain, it's when a protein takes on a shape that is, unlike the shape it's supposed to be, but then that protein in that conformation becomes infectious. So the prion can then bind to this other versions of the same protein, and then they will change to that new bad shape as well. And then they'll bind to more proteins, and then that will create more prions, and then it spreads so that the proteins that are supposed to be one conformation, like it's like an infectious change in conformation. This is how mad cow disease works, a number of other diseases. But it is also sometimes responsible for messing up your wine. So yeast eats sugar, and when they do that, they produce alcohol. And when bacteria consume sugar, they produce acids like lactic acid. Winemakers want wine with alcohol, not with extra acid. But sometimes yeast fermentation can get stuck, and instead bacteria come in and consume all the sugar, and basically the wine isn't wine. It doesn't taste like wine. It does not taste good, even if you like the taste of wine, which I don't quite get it, but that's neither here nor there. So like the yeast fermentation relies on this process called glucose repression. That's a process that blocks the yeast from consuming anything other than the sugar from the grapes. It keeps it focused on that sugar and moving fast. And it's especially strong in Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is the yeast that we use in almost all brewing and baking. But scientists have found bacteria that can come in during the winemaking process and send signals to the yeast that cause prions to replicate in the yeast membrane, and those prions block the glucose repression, and then they cause the yeast to start consuming other stuff besides sugar that slows down the fermentation, and it also opens up this glucose for the bacteria to consume. And so that basically spoils the wine. Now, that sounds like a very crafty thing for bacteria to be able to do. And you'd think maybe like, wouldn't yeast have figured out a way around this? But it turns out that though prions are usually bad, in this case, this might actually be something that yeast evolved to benefit themselves. So the prion switching in their membrane might be a way for the organisms to like hedge their bets and kind of be able to like switch back and forth between two different conditions to let them adapt really quickly when food sources change, or like suddenly there's bacteria in the room, so that they might broaden their variety of diets. And like it's able to do that by having a change in its membrane that is caused by bacteria, but not something that's like permanent, like a genetic adaptation. So in this case, both the yeast and the bacteria can benefit from what they call stuck fermentation. As the yeast start metabolizing less sugar, the wine becomes more habitable to the bacteria, and the yeast can start consuming stuff from more carbon sources. That's great for them. It's bad for us and winemakers, which is why they add sulfur dioxide early in the process often, because that kills off the bacteria and prevents stuck fermentation.
Oh, they're killing their little friends.
That's right. So that they don't give them a weird membrane-bound prion disease that's not actually a disease. It's actually good.
Okay, so you say conformation. Is that just like configuration? Is that like a similar...
It's like the shape that the protein takes. Okay. So a protein can take several different shapes. And there's all kinds of things that can change protein conformation. So whenever you hear about binding, something binding to a protein, usually that means that binding changes the conformation of the protein. And in the case of like a taste receptor in your mouth, like sugar binds to the taste receptor protein, that changes the conformation, and that like opens up some kind of signal into your neural pathways that then gets interpreted as sweet by your brain.
So can a protein fold into different folds in the course of its protein lifetime?
Yeah, that's what changing conformation is. And sometimes it's like helpful to the protein's function. Like it needs to change shape a little bit in order to do what it does, whether it's convey a signal or help break down a compound or have something bind to it. And sometimes it's unhelpful where the change induced in it, like with prion diseases, breaks it so that it can't do anything that it was supposed to do. Like the shape is weird instead of useful in some way.
And then it can tell its friends to turn into that shape too.
Right. So basically that shape binds to other proteins of the same type and causes those proteins to change into that new bad shape.
Yeah.
What
it's like,
the hell?
Yeah.
The proteins like give each other hugs and then they like end up the same shape.
There's a lot of stuff going on inside of us, huh?
Well, hopefully that's not happening inside of you. Though there is now like thought that this kind of like prion is just like a name for a protein that self-perpetuates its conformation.
Okay.
And so it may be like, as in this case, that there are some prions that actually confer benefit, but we're really used to thinking of them as diseases.
So none of this helps us make better wine, though.
Well, knowing this helps us understand why bad wine happens, though it doesn't really help us make bad wine, because even before we understood why it happens, we knew how to prevent it, which was to kill the bacteria. We just weren't sure like why the bacteria were causing this change in the yeast.
It could potentially help us make extremely nasty wine for like prank purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn. Like we've probably talked about a million times before, and like I had to ask Ceri a lot of million questions about today while I was writing this, when you get a vaccination, you are being injected with proteins isolated from a disease-causing molecule that activates your immune system and basically helps to like train it to fight the disease without actually having to go through having the disease. Is that right? So far? Okay. So the concept behind a vaccine for a disease or a bacteria seems pretty straightforward to a dumb guy like me, but researchers have long been looking into a vaccine for cancer, which is a disease that is made up of your own body cells, which is trickier. So this is where I'm going to get out of my depth even more. Part of your immune system is made up of T and B cells, which are types of white blood cells that attack diseases in different ways. So B cells make antibodies that neutralize viruses and bacteria. And then there are certain T cells that just straight up kill infected cells. Many vaccines trigger B cells, but T cells are the ones that kill cancer. So a cancer vaccine would need to trigger those killer T cells using proteins from the cancers. But the problem is those proteins aren't durable enough to last in the body long enough to activate T cells, which are already harder to activate than B cells are. So cancer vaccines are tough to make and they don't work very often because it will like disintegrate before it even gets where it's supposed to go. Luckily, we have an unlikely ally in the search for a cancer vaccine, and that ally is my greatest foe, the spider. So spider webs are made of strands of incredibly tough and resistant proteins that, thanks to the miracles of modern science, we can engineer in a lab in any like kind of microform that we want to. So in 2018, researchers in Germany fused these T-cell activating proteins, like cancer vaccines that they were studying for cancer vaccines, into microscopic shells made of spiderweb molecules, and then injected them into mice, and found that not only were the shells tough enough to convey the proteins through the body safely, they, quote, considerably increased T lymphocyte or T cell immune responses. But how considerably that was locked behind a paywall, so I couldn't quite figure that out. So that added spiderweb toughness also potentially means that we can make more resilient vaccines of all types that can survive in temperatures of up to 212 Fahrenheit. I don't know how much Celsius that is, meaning that they could be transported far more easily than vaccines we have now that basically need to either be frozen or refrigerated all the time. So in addition to that, artificial spiderweb protein strands are being researched for use as artificial muscle fibers and a substrate on which to grow various human tissues like heart tissue and stuff like that. So thanks to spiders, I guess.
Thanks, spiders, I guess.
Pretty much soon we'll be all spider. All of our organ,
I don't want to be
all our
any spider.
vaccines, just
I'm
gonna
in
be
this finished basement. I'm so scared all the time that a spider's
Sam?
going to sneak up on me.
Do you want to live forever? Because if you want to live forever, you're going to have to be part spider. That's the rules.
Oh no, that's such a cursed trade-off. I don't know.
Maybe the first time you just like succumb and you say, okay, I'm going to be part spider. Maybe that's the moment when suddenly you see your spider brothers as the siblings they are, as a part of your family, in that we are all related to the last universal common ancestor and basically are all the same organism. All right, you guys. So now, Ceri, Stefan, you have to vote for the one that you like the most. Was it mine with yeast prions putting a pause on winemaking, but actually helping the yeast all along? Or Sam with spiderweb proteins maybe able to help cancer vaccines last long enough in the human body to be effective, and also potentially long enough to get to places where they can be used without refrigeration? 3, 2, 1.
Sam?
All right, I got 1 point, you guys. All right, everybody, it's time for Ask the Science Couch. We've got a listener question for our couch of finely honed scientific minds. It's from @Topato-Chips. What is a complete protein? Are there incomplete proteins? Gosh, that's an interesting question.
Do you know anything about it, Hank?
Yeah, well, I don't know if a complete protein is a thing. I don't know about it. There's certainly incomplete proteins. You can make a protein that's not all the way done.
I mean, I
Boom,
think
did
it's
it.
not like a single protein. I think it's just like a descriptor for foods that contain all the proteins you need, or combinations of foods that contain.
Okay,
all
this
the
is
proteins.
it's a nutritional category. Okay.
Yeah, and this is also where my weakness comes in, where I'm like, I also initially thought the question was asking about like protein as a singular thing, but this is a nutrition question in disguise, which means Stefan's going to be good at it.
Well, is it about like whether the protein in a plant or animal contains all of the proteins we need?
All of the amino acids we need.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Like Stefan was saying with his truth or fail, there are 20 standard amino acids involved in protein formation. There's one extra, selenocysteine, that's kind of weird, and it can like be produced in other biological ways, but it's not like existent in food that we eat, I think. It's a
Okay,
mystery. I'm not
weird.
going to address it too much. Selenocysteine exists, so don't at me about that. Mostly that is what I wanted to get out. But there are different categories of amino acids. There are essential amino acids, which can't be made by the human body. There are conditionally essential amino acids, which can sometimes be, but you can also be deficient in them. So, like, for example, babies can be deficient in arginine, which causes a variety of health problems. So, like, their bodies might not make enough, and we have to supplement with it. And then there are non-essential, which your body just makes them out of other compounds inside or by breaking things down. And so a complete protein in nutrition sense means it's just a food that like supplies you with all essential amino acids. And I think there are some foods that have it, but then there's some combinations of foods. So that's where you get like peanut butter and toast or rice and beans or the other things that I read on the website. I don't know.
Ezekiel
Stefan,
bread.
This is where Stefan
That's
might know
one
more.
thing. Hummus and pita. Quinoa, I think, is complete. Most meats and like eggs are complete proteins, which is why you have to think about the combinations more if you're
Right.
a vegetarian or vegan.
I can't believe I'd never heard of this. If you want to ask the Science Couch your question, follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents, where we'll tweet out topics from upcoming episodes every week. Thank you to at Velociraptorial, at Vinay Verma, and everybody else who tweeted us your questions for this episode. Sambuck final scores. Everybody's got one Sambuck except for Stefan, who's got 3, which means that Stefan has pulled
Holy
substantially into
moly.
the lead with 58 Sambucks. Ceri and Sam are at 55 and 54, and I'm going to not talk about it. If you like this show and you want to help us out, it's really easy to do that. First, you can leave us a review wherever you listen. That helps us know what you like about the show, and also it just feels good to read them. So thank you for the people who have sent those in. Second, you can tweet out your favorite moment from the episode. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, just tell people about us. Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Ceri Riley.
I've been Stefan Chin.
And I've been Sam Schultz.
SciShow Tangents is a co-production of Complexly and the wonderful team at WNYC Studios. It's created by all of us and produced by Caitlin Hoffmeister and Sam Schultz, who edits a lot of these episodes along with Hiroka Matsushima. Our social media organizer is Paula Garcia Prieto. Our editorial assistant is Deboki Chakravarti. And our sound design is by Joseph Tuna-Medish. Of course, we couldn't make any of this without our patrons on Patreon, so thank you so much to them. And remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted.
But one more thing. There's this protein called Sonic Hedgehog that doesn't have anything to do with going fast, but it does have to do with body layout during development. And in fact, if it's mutated, that can cause anorectal malformations, aka
Ooh.
butt development problems, in lots of different animals, including mammals.
Oh, you really need the butt.
You do. It's true.
Right.
It's one of the main things you need.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to SciShow Tangents, the lightly competitive science knowledge showcase. I'm your host, Hank Green, and joining me this week, as always, is science expert Ceri Riley
Hi.
and our resident everyman, Sam Schultz.
Hello.
So as you two know, the world is in quite a state. But one of the main ways it's in a state is because of this little carbon dioxide problem we got going on. We took a lot of stuff that was created by life and then fossilized and like got all that energy that the life stored up and chunked it together, and then we started burning it. And one of the things that does is it really re-releases all of that carbon dioxide that those things put into themselves to make themselves one way or another. And now it's in the atmosphere, and every day is a little more. And I was thinking they put it in the soda, so why don't we put it all in soda? We can have so much
In
bubble water.
one big soda for everyone.
How big of a soda do we have to make? It can't be the whole ocean.
Why
I know
not?
that for sure.
How do you know that?
Well, because I just feel it in my bones.
Okay. Well, this seems like a math question, and I don't know how to answer it, but probably enough soda that it would really like put a dent in people's drinking water, I would imagine. That wouldn't be good, but they could drink the soda.
You could drink carbonated. You don't have to put syrup in the soda. Basically, you're making fizzy water.
No, we don't want to do that because like farming sugar beets and sugarcane, that's a lot. That's also, or corn is I guess the main way that we get the sugar in the sodas these days. Is pretty like heavy industry, so we don't want to do that either. We just want bubble water.
Put a big soda stream in every water treatment plant that somehow collects the atmospheric carbon, and then just so then everybody has a sparkling tap water. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, and then the real trick is that you can't burp.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what happens to it after it goes in you.
You have to not burp. Have you seen those videos on TikTok of there's a challenge of like drink a liter of Sprite without burping? It's fantastic.
Have you done it?
It's really good. No, I haven't done it. It looks deeply unpleasant.
Should we all do it for the show? Should we start doing TikTok challenges for the show?
That's not a terrible idea.
Okay.
Yeah, you two can slap each other with tortillas.
We gotta get viewership somehow. Yeah, what happens is as you get through it, you discover that you have to burp, and then they don't burp, and then about, I don't know, maybe 5% of the time, you do sort of projectile vomit Sprite.
Okay, I'll have to cover my computer up with a tarp before I try this next week.
A little
Make sure you
splash
have something
zone
with
poncho for my computer.
Yeah.
Like it's the front row at a Gallagher
It's in the
thing.
splash zone for sure, yeah.
Yeah. But the rest of the time you just have the most epic burp, and I've never burped the way these people burp, so part of me does want to experience that.
Could we make stuff that breathes carbon dioxide besides plants? Could you make a bug do that or something?
Well, we got plants, and that's
People
really
make
good.
artificial leaves too, but
They're
that
not.
just kind of like sequesters
we are
carbon.
working on the artificial leaf thing, and I think we're gonna keep getting better at
The
it.
plants got to start pulling their weight a little better, though.
They're pulling
The
so
plants are
much of their
doing
weight.
great,
The
Sam.
seaweed, the trees.
All plants
All of
listening. Try harder.
No,
I need
they're
you to
so
do all
tired.
this.
They're going as fast as they can, and then it's getting
and
hot,
there's all
and they're
the
like,
little-
ugh.
The little single-celled ones, the single-celled autotrophs in the oceans, doing all that good
Grow
work.
more
Diatoms.
cells, you bums. We can't.
Oh man, they got so many. They're doing so much more work than we are.
Yeah, you know who's
I love it.
hindering their work? We are, because they try to grow
it's
big,
true.
and then we're like, your flesh looks good for our construction.
Paper and homes.
Yeah. So we're gonna freaking kill
I
you.
think I'll turn you into the stuff I wipe my butt with. How does that sound?
Congratulations on working so hard to counter climate change.
No, we got to get plants into the marketplace of ideas. Come on, we got to get plants.
Yeah,
capitalists.
plants. Yeah, look, we're never going to truly respect you until you start having takes on Twitter, plants. This is the only path forward for your species.
Plants, pull yourself
your
up by your
kingdom, I guess.
bootstraps. You gotta.
Your root straps.
All right. Well, every week here on Tangents, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with science facts while not staying on topic. Our panelists are playing for glory and for Hank Bucks, which I'll be awarding as we play. At the end of the episode, one of you two is going to win. And I hope that whoever it is feels awful good about it. Now, as always, we're going to introduce this week's topic with the traditional science poem, this week from Ceri.
I think I've got it in my hair and on the bottom of my shoe. It's in my mac and cheese, I swear, and even there in super glue. In shells and bats, nylon and grass, in credit cards and parchment sheets, in paint and squash and petroleum gas, in astronauts and big athletes. But it's not table salt or a titanium ring, nor water, nor ice, nor aluminum foil. So that narrows it down from everything to a subset within the air, sea, and soil. The answer, my friend, if you've had enough, is one of the elements, atomic number 6. You'll find carbon in a lot of stuff. Everything living on Earth, plus some tricks. So when you talk about chemistry, you talk about us, our weird inventions and squishy bits, microscopic or global. Let's discuss and enter this battle of Hank Bucks and wits.
Wow.
You missed the outtake where Ceri said Hank butt.
Yes.
How embarrassing.
So the topic for the day is carbon, which, look, you can't really play. You can play favorites with the elements. Absolutely,
Yeah.
you can.
They
And
don't
if we
know.
are gonna play favorites with the elements, it's gonna be a carbon. Like oxygen, also good. Hydrogen, nitrogen, good, fine. But carbon, oh my God.
All of your favorite foods, carbon.
All your favorite foods, yes.
No matter
also,
what it
all
is.
foods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all your favorite foods are a subset of all foods. So
Yeah. So finally, we have reached a definable topic.
I know. It
Carbon
only took us
Is-
100 something
do we
episodes.
know what carbon is? Ceri, what is carbon?
Yeah, it's a chemical element, has the symbol C. The atomic number is
Yeah.
6, which means it has 6 protons, and carbon-12 has 6 neutrons and 6 electrons, and it's like neutral, non-charged
Sure.
state. There are other isotopes of carbon, which means the number of neutrons varies in the nucleus. So you can have carbon-13, carbon-14, and that's the stuff that decays.
Yeah.
We use for
But this is
radiocarbon
great
dating.
because like the whole idea of chemistry is we're like, what are elements? It is defined by the number of protons it has. If it
Yeah.
has 6 protons, it's carbon. It might be a carbon ion. It might be a carbon isotope, but it is carbon.
Mm-hmm.
So we know what carbon is.
We know
Yay!
the easiest definition ever. Thank you, chemists,
Yeah.
for making such a precise borders around the thing element.
Yeah. But why is carbon so great? Why is carbon such a big deal?
Yeah,
why
why
are we
can it
not
be-
doing an episode on tungsten right now?
Why can it be everything?
I mean, I can answer this question
Yeah,
if you
go.
can't
You
because
do.
this is my whole bag.
Yes.
But so
Lignin
it's-
fan Hank Green, please. Why is carbon so great?
carbon, because of the way that electrons jiggle with each other around atoms. So carbon has 6 electrons, and the way that the electrons like to jiggle around for physics reasons is that there's like a bunch of different balls where they jiggle inside of called orbitals, and the first jiggle ball gets 2 and the second one gets 6, and so carbon has a total of 6, so it's got 2 in the first one and then 4 in the second one, and so it wants 4 more electrons, so it's got 4 different opportunities to bond to 4 different things. Sometimes it double bonds, so it can bond to 2 different things, like carbon dioxide is 2 double bonds to 2 oxygens, but it just because of that it can do so many different chemistry things. It's also, so there are other things that have this property where they can bond to 4 other things, but carbon is little, and so it doesn't take up very much space. There's also lots of it, but a big piece of it is that it's physically small, which allows it to create more complicated chemistry.
They make it's like a scaffolding upon which everything
Yes,
else.
it's a great scaffolding. So
Okay.
you can just imagine carbon bonded to carbon, and that gives you, since it's one carbon molecule, one carbon atom bonded to 2 others, that gives it 2 more opportunities to do something else. So you have this long chain, and it can be double bonded to an oxygen. It can be bonded to an alcohol, which is an OH group, and something else. It can be bonded to another carbon, and then you get carbon split into a bunch of different ways. And you could do anything. We could make these you could make giant molecules that you could literally hold in your hand, or you can make tiny molecules that are in the air all around us right now, causing global warming
And making your soda bubbly.
and making your soda bubbly and feeding the plants. Yeah, Ceri, where does the word carbon come from? Because I find elements have excellent etymologies often.
This one is, I don't know if you'd call it excellent. It
I will.
exists. Okay. So we actually knew about carbon, or knew about the idea of carbon as
Yeah.
an element before the periodic table was solidified into a thing.
Well, as a thing, not an element.
as a thing, I guess. As a
Thing that existed.
as
Yeah.
a thing that existed, as an essential principle. A pure and essential principle is what it was called.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So in French, it was carbone, which is just carbon with an E, which might have been pronounced
I'm sure that's how
carbon.
they pronounce it.
Yeah, carbone with the emphasis on the bone, which was then anglicized to carbon. in 1788 when some French chemists, as they were wont to be, were adopting a bunch of words from French to English for English chemists to take advantage of. Oh, it was coined in 1787 by Lavoisier, great guy, as charbone, which kind of
Charbone
makes sense.
Sound like a
because
Pokemon.
Yeah, it's Cubone, but burnt, which comes from Latin carbonum, which means a coal or a glowing coal or charcoal, which the ash from that is a carbon residue. So it comes from what it is, which is we burned something. There's like a carbonized layer left over or dust, and that's carbon.
I thought that was a great etymology. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, now it's time for us to play a little game. Are you guys ready for this game that I have for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called Carbon This or That. Carbon is a vital ingredient in our world, of course, which means that there are tons of ways to measure and quantify it. There are common things like measuring our carbon footprint, but also less typical things. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's game, This or That Carbon. In each round, I'm going to present you with some way that we've been measuring carbon and then giving you two things to compare. And it's up to you to figure out which of the things is bigger. Does it make sense? I hope so. Are you ready?
So.
Yeah, we got to pick one of two things.
Yeah.
50-50 chance of success.
50-50. So first, we're going to talk about radiocarbon dating, which is a widely used technique that shows up in archaeology and forensics, allowing people to estimate the age of a sample based on the amount of radioactive carbon-14 in it. In 2020, researchers at the University of Glasgow published a paper titled Using Carbon Isotopes to Fight the Rise in Fraudulent Whiskey. According to their calibration curve, which of the following should have more radioactive carbon-14 in it? A whiskey distilled in 1966 or a whiskey distilled in 1980?
Those are both after atomic testing, which is, I was like, that's going to be the trick.
Does that affect things? Yeah, no.
I think there'd be more in the one from 1966 because something is breaking down or something like that. Ah, damn it. I think I'm wrong. Okay, I'm going to keep it, though.
I also think 1960, I think it's the older one because I think it, but I don't know.
I feel like the wood has something to do with it, maybe. I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my mind to the new one.
1960
All right, you can do that.
Yeah.
So 1966 for Ceri, 1980 for Sam.
Yeah.
Well, I would have gone with 1966, but I'm about to read you the answer, which I have not read yet. So I'm also in the dark. When it comes to radiocarbon dating, researchers have been making calibration curves that go back thousands of years. And very broadly, the older a sample is, the less carbon there is due to decay. But in 1955, there was a spike in carbon-14 in the atmosphere because of above-ground bomb testing that lasted until the Limited Test Ban Treaty that was signed in 1963. So a whiskey distilled in 1966 would have incorporated more of that carbon-14 than a whiskey distilled in 1980 after much of that carbon would have decayed. This is called the bomb pulse, and it's given scientists a more recent curve to fit their samples into in the last century, helping them study a bunch of stuff and do forensics on things like fraudulent art and dead bodies and even fake whiskey. So yes, whiskey distilled in 1966 should have more carbon-14. So that's a point for Ceri. Now, researchers have been developing new materials from carbon, including carbon nanotubes. And of course, they want to make sure that those materials are not toxic. So in 2009, a team of scientists from Brown University decided to see how the fruit fly Drosophila responded to different types of carbon nanoparticles at different points in their life. So which of the following was more toxic? Carbon nanoparticles that were fed to Drosophila larvae, or test tubes filled with carbon nanoparticle powder and then loaded with an adult Drosophila?
Oh, well, that feels like different. You're drowning the adult one in carbon, and you're giving a little snack to a larva.
Yeah.
That's just a snack.
That's just a potato chip given to a baby.
I'm glad that the Drosophila larvae are like, yeah, I'll eat that. I'm a maggot.
Yeah.
Whatever. Just put it in my mouth. I don't know.
Let's try it out.
It's made of carbon. Carbon's good.
Yummy.
Yeah, I think I agree with your reasoning, Ceri. I think the adult one's breathing in there and being like, no good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the adult seems like it would struggle more because carbon also isn't, I can't see it doing something like mutaty or weird.
in the larva's body, but maybe we'll find out.
Well, you are both correct. It turns out that being fed carbon nanoparticles didn't do much to the larva, and they did just fine physically and reproductively later on in life. Meanwhile, the researchers also put adult flies into test tubes that contained one of 4 different types of nanoparticles. And while 2 were fine for the flies, the other 2 ended up coating the flies and keeping them stuck like they were in some kind of tar pit.
No.
And the flies died within 6 to 10 hours.
Oof.
You all right, Sam? Are you sad for the flies?
I'm sad for the flies.
I could use some of that.
This is
We have fruit flies in our apartment. Give me those nanotubes.
There's probably a store-bought solution that might be a little more economical, but I don't know. Who knows? So they weren't quite clear on what was actually killing the flies, but the researchers found that the nanoparticles covered the flies and might have been weighing them down while also clogging all of their breathing holes. That's how insects breathe. They just got a bunch
They
of
got
holes in them.
I'd imagine, yeah.
Yep, that's how the air gets in there. Now, the fact that some of the nanoparticles caused problems and others didn't suggests that the form of the nanoparticle itself was important in the final toxicity to the adult flies. The experiment also doesn't necessarily say much about how they're going to affect us because we do not have wings or breathing holes. I guess we have a few breathing holes.
We got a couple breathing holes, but we can cover them up.
It's kind of strange to have 3 breathing holes.
It's kind of weird we don't have 4. I should be able to breathe out of my butt.
Actually,
You can?
did you hear about this?
Oh, I maybe did. Was there a pig that breathed
Yeah.
out of its butt or something like that?
Yeah, they found that you can help something that is not able to breathe right at that moment by putting oxygen into its rectum in one way or another.
Great.
And that actually does help keep blood oxygen levels up.
Okay, so much like the bug, I am also full of holes. The air could just get it.
You're full of breathing holes. Yeah. Round number 3 and our final round. African naked mole rats are cold-blooded, which means that they are not able to regulate their own body temperature. To understand how these animals move around their homes to control their temperatures, researchers from City University of New York studied their underground layers and found that the different chambers within them have different levels of carbon dioxide. So within a naked mole rat's underground home, which of the following has more CO2, the nest chamber or the toilet chamber? And yes, they have both of those.
Naked mole rats are cold-blooded? How did they end up this way? Okay.
They lost their fur and they lost their internal homeostasis.
I love it when you name an animal and you're like, what does that look like? Well, it looks like a naked rat mole.
Yeah, it looks like a naked rat and it lives underground, so it must be a mole. Put them all together.
Yeah. It's a naked mole
And
rat.
it lives in Africa, so put that at the front.
Yeah. I just gotta say, we're also hairless. So we're kind of like naked monkey.
Naked monkey guys.
Naked monkey guys.
That's naked and it's a monkey. It
What
looks
is he like?
a
We
cat.
look like monkeys, but we also, because we like walk around on 2 legs, we're kind of like birds.
Oh.
So we're like a naked monkey bird.
If other animals call us that, better,
Yeah.
more power to
Be like,
them.
all right,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I deserve it, probably.
you can call me whatever you want after what I did to you.
Uh-huh.
When you're sleeping, you want to be breathing. Of course. When you're pooping, you don't really care as much. Maybe they go in there and hold their
hold your breath.
breaths.
That's how. Yeah, you go.
Yeah. Yeah, but that would make it lower in there. Well, anyway,
What do you
They-
think it's higher?
No,
they're
Yeah.
venting it out of the nesting chamber. They don't care about the poop chamber, so that one has higher.
yeah, they're getting all that CO2 in the poop hole.
Yeah.
Okay. I think
What do you
that
think, Ceri?
they're all sleeping, so you're just breathing out a lot. And I know astronauts sometimes have trouble. If they're not by a vent, they get like a
Yeah.
bubble of carbon dioxide around their head and can
Mhm.
asphyxiate. Just like a
Mhm.
very scary idea that you can just breathe and not realize. And so I think naked mole rats are similar, where they're just breathing and not realizing. And then when they get out of the nest, they're like, wow, fresh. And don't realize that it's because they've been breathing in and out their old stale air.
Well, Ceri is correct. Congratulations.
I'm a genius this episode.
You're doing great. That's the nest chamber where the queen rat spends much of her time with the breeding male. there's apparently a queen rat, has the highest concentration of CO2 of all the chambers with around 2.3% of the total atmospheric pressure. In comparison, the toilet chambers are around 0.05, and the food chambers, there's a lot of chambers, are around 0.5%. The researchers were very interested in this because it seems like the naked mole rats seek out higher carbon dioxide levels, which they realized actually helps protect them from having seizures. They spend around 70% of their lifetime in that nest chamber, and when researchers infused carbon dioxide into certain chambers, they found that the mole rats tended to visit those chambers more often. They like it that way. In addition, the researchers found that when naked mole rats were exposed to hot air with low carbon dioxide levels, the rats would start to hyperventilate and seize. But they did not do this when the hot air had higher CO2 levels. The researchers hypothesized that because naked mole rats lack the switch that many of us rely on to control electrical activity in the brain, they instead rely on CO2 to prevent seizures. Wild.
That is
What weird little
absolutely
fellows.
wild.
There's only one way to be a naked mole rat, and it's weird. It's a weird way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's like they read a book about ants and they were like, let's try that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Ceri, congrats on your 3 points to Sam's 1. Next, we're going to take a short break. Then it'll be time for the fact off. All right, everybody, get ready for the fact off. Our panelists have all brought science facts to present in an attempt to blow my mind, and after they've presented their facts, I will judge them and award them Hank Bucks any way I see fit. But to decide who goes first, I have a question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Oh.
Not me.
Okay.
So carbon cycles through many different reservoirs through our planet, including the crust, the ocean, the soil, the atmosphere, and using models and various other methods, scientists are able to estimate the amount of carbon in these different reservoirs. Around 85.1% of all above surface carbon is in the deep ocean, making up about 37,000 gigatons. Meanwhile, our atmosphere has a lot less carbon. How many gigatons of carbon are there in the atmosphere? Again, there's 37,000 gigatons in the ocean where there is more. How many gigatons are in the atmosphere?
And that's 85.1. So hypothetically, we should be able to figure out like the right answer.
Well, you could get close using math. Yes, but I don't expect you will.
That's a problem for me.
Are you going to do math, Sam?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Did
God.
you get out your phone? You doing a calculator?
I'm writing it down on a piece of paper.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to assume that it's part us, part atmosphere, bigger part atmosphere.
Yeah.
Maybe like,
There's also not deep ocean.
yeah, that's
So
true.
shallow ocean, atmosphere, life,
Dirt. That's
Yeah.
above the crust.
dirt, also a big deal.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say 5,000 gigatons of carbon is in the atmosphere.
Uh-oh, I ran out of time to do math. I'm going to say
You can keep doing it.
4,999.
Wow, Sam, you're the winner. It's 590. A mere 590 gigatons
That's it?
of carbon. That seems like a solvable problem. Now that
Yeah.
we've said it that way, somebody get the bottles.
The plants are trying really hard. Sam,
makes
I
the
think you
plants
need to
great
apologize to
work.
plants.
No, I think it actually makes the plants seem a little worse because there's not that much up there.
Yeah, what are you doing?
See, now Hank agrees with me.
No, the plants are doing so good.
The
Get
new
your act
SciShow
together,
ep-
plants.
The next SciShow episode, the thumbnail will say plants are lazy.
Yeah,
We're calling them out.
They're ruining everything for us. We put
Plants.
so much CO2 in the atmosphere, and they're like, "I'm trying. I'm full. Eat,
Why are your plants
eat
like
your dinner."
German?
So, Sam, who do you want to go first?
Oh, I'm going to go first. Seize the
Okay.
day. I'm being brave. I'm brave, Sam, now. Much like wood, silk from silkworms and spiders is very useful, but people suck at making it. Only in the ass of spiders and worms can such a wonder material be made. Silkworm silk has been used in textiles for forever because it's so smooth and nice, but it's also very strong and can be used in medical applications like sutures and probably other cool super sciencey stuff. And spider silk as you've probably heard, is frequently touted as the wonder material of the future. And in fact, we just made a big list show on SciShow about this. But to summarize, since it's so strong, spider silk, like one of the main things is that it could have tons of uses in material engineering, including for things like bridge cables or biodegradable plastics. And while sure, these materials are pretty dang strong already, we are humans and we must tinker. So there have been many things tried to make these silks stronger. We've meddled with the DNA of these animals. We've replicated the silk in ways that make the proteins that give it its strength bigger. We've taken silk after it's been spun and messed with it to add various particles to make it stronger. But in the last several years, scientists have come up with a much simpler way to produce strong silks than by messing with the building blocks of life. In 2016, a paper was published detailing an improved silkworm silk that was 50% stronger than regular silk, and when exposed to extreme heat, it could conduct electricity, like you'd bake it into something that could conduct electricity. Such a silk could be used for tougher sutures, components in bioorganic implants powered by the human body, and even smart clothes filled with super light electronics. And how did the team make this super material? Well, they made silkworms eat carbon nanotubes. So carbon nanotubes are, as the name implies, very tiny tubes of carbon atoms with, I think, the highest tensile strength of any material we know of. Tensile? Is it tensile? Tensile is what you put on trees.
Tensile. I think it is tensile, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have applications in nanotech because they conduct electricity and they're real strong, but they can also be added to other stuff to make those materials stronger. Like, I think we've talked about on this show how carbon nanotubes were found in Damascus steel, which is a famously strong type of steel that we don't really know how to make anymore. So anyway, inserting nanotubes into silkworm silk has been tried before, I think, with silk that's already been spun. But these scientists just mixed some nanotubes with water and sprayed it on leaves, and then the worms ate it and crapped out super silk. So pretty easy. And then another group of scientists did the same thing with spiders in 2017 and got silk that was 3 times stronger than natural spider silk.
What?
Which I think put spider silk, they said, on the same level as like carbon nanotubes in terms of strength. It became like one of the strongest things we've ever discovered. So silkworms can make enough silk that making like super silk like this at scale is pretty simple, just as simple as spraying leaves with water. But spiders, on the other hand, make way less silk, and we're still figuring out how to make spider silk proteins without a spider. But since this process requires a spider to eat the nanotubes and spin it into a web, all we've done here, it seems to me, is given spiders super webs.
Which, hey, I think that, why not? Try it out.
I don't know.
See what happens.
Seems bad.
That's true. There is a concern that they could. I don't like walking into a spider web, and I wouldn't like walking into one that's made of super silk
like,
even more, I think.
Yeah.
So they just like, it's weird to me that you put a nanotube into a silkworm and that it ends up going, like, it doesn't just poop it out. No. It ends up going into the silk
into this little thing.
I would think it would just poop it out. That's great. That's very cool. I'm confident that someday we will have a bunch of spiders that sort of make everything for us.
And then aliens will come to our planet and see all of our spiders making everything, and they'll go, these guys are weird. Don't mess with those guys.
Oh, no, they'll be like, wow, that entire planet is run by spiders. That's weird. We've never seen that before. Yeah. Almost everything on that planet is a spider or a chicken.
And then there's some naked bird guys walking around too. I don't know what they're doing.
Naked ape birds, yeah.
Ceri, what do you got for us?
So foams are a weird and curious part of materials science. They're kind of related
Foams.
to foams. F-O-A-M-S.
Okay.
I don't enunciate, which is bad in a podcaster, but they're kind of related to bubbles if you listen to that episode of Tangents, but I'd argue that foam is a distinct category of thing.
Yes, you would, because you had really strong bubble opinions.
People have disagreed with you about your bubble opinions
really?
already. And
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
I expected
like me,
that.
for example.
Yeah. I expected that. So anyway, in engineering uses, for example, foams are often solid materials with pockets of gas dispersed throughout it. They're useful because they're generally really low weight, but strong and have different properties based on the atoms that make up the solid bits. And as far as I can tell, carbon foams aren't everywhere like styrofoams or polyurethane foams, but seem like pretty useful things. Carbon is not super explosive because carbon structures have a really high ignition temperature. They can conduct electricity, And depending on how the foam is structured, it can either conduct or insulate from heat. So scientists are excited to use carbon foam for things like aerospace insulation or even in batteries. And the ever-present challenge with new materials is finding ways to manufacture them that are worthwhile to whoever's making them, whether that's quick or cheap or ethical when it comes to labor or environmental impact. Lots of different factors. And the main ways that carbon foams have been developed so far involve carbon-rich byproducts like coal tar. By putting it under a lot of pressure, it'll foam up and then can be stabilized and shaped into the foam that you want. But a 2016 paper described a totally different method to create 3D carbon foam structures that felt extremely like something that we would joke about here, except it's real. To make carbon foam, they baked and then burnt the heck out of a loaf of bread. So their materials and methods section of the paper.
So they baked a loaf of bread.
Yes.
So that's the first part. You can't really get a loaf of bread without baking it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of given.
It was given,
And
yeah.
then they just cooked it.
Then they burnt it. Yeah, so the materials and methods section of the paper is literally a recipe for baking bread,
Whoa.
playing with different amounts of yeast and flour and water to make the crumb different. For example, quote, in a typical process, 5 grams dry yeast was dissolved in 115 milliliters water by stirring. After completely dissolved, the mixture was poured into 300 grams flour, which was placed into a dough mixer in advance. That's just a bread recipe. That's on... you Google how to make sourdough bread. Except, instead of eating it, they stuck it in an oven to dry for 18 hours at 80 degrees Celsius, and then stuck it in a tube furnace with argon gas at 1,000 degrees Celsius to carbonize it. Basically, they didn't put oxygen in there to help prevent flames and control the decomposition process to leave a carbon-rich husk behind. It's totally possible if you leave a pizza in an oven for way too long, but this way does it quicker and ensures it. And that tasty breadcrumb became the pores of a carbon foam. They tried soaking chunks of their burnt bread in ethanol and setting it on fire, and it maintained its shape, so it was heat resistant. And they found that this carbon foam shields electromagnetic radiation fairly well, which is also seen as a plus for aerospace uses or other technologies. So
Bread
it's like
planes. Are we going to have bread spy
Bread
planes?
planes.
I
bread
think so.
planes.
I think we're gonna have bread camouflage.
Yeah. And we're gonna surround our Teslas in bread so the EMPs can't get us.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's light, it's strong, and super burnt bread is now the best thing since sliced bread. These scientists are geniuses. That's the end of my fact. I love it. This is so fun.
Is it crumbly? This is my concern. If I just squeeze it, does it turn into a bunch of dust? Or is it good? Is it good firm foam?
They toasted it up real good. Huh?
It's firm. It's really, really burnt.
Did they call it bread, or were they lying to themselves about what they were doing?
No, they called it. They
Okay.
called it bread. In the paper, it was
Okay.
called multifunctional stiff carbon foam derived from bread.
Okay, good.
So they knew what they were
Multifunctional
doing.
stiff carbon foam derived from bread.
This is fun.
I love it.
Really good, Ceri. Oh, 2 high quality facts. I feel like I'm learning so much about, and I'm also gaining just an appreciation for the work of scientists and optimism about the future.
It's a
of
bread and
our
spider-filled
bread
future.
super silk future. Oh, well, Ceri came into that one solidly in the lead. Those facts are very equally good. So Ceri's going to run away with the episode. Congratulations, Sam. I have every faith in you for that you could come back. And I don't know what kind of deficit you're operating at right now, but it feels like a bit of one.
No, I think I'm doing okay. You don't know.
I've seen you've gone on some runs this season. Yeah.
We were tied, and now I'm ahead by 1, I think.
Oh, wow.
So
look at that.
take it back.
Wow.
Preconceived
Ceri's
notions about me.
I just, that's not it at all.
Sam, you didn't go to MIT, so surely you don't know anything.
Surely you're bad at game shows, Sam.
Congratulations, Ceri. Now it's time to Ask the Science Couch, where we ask a listener question to our virtual couch of finely honed scientific minds. Sam's dad suggested that since Ceri and I are theoretically the science couch, that Sam should ask the science couch question. So Sam, what's our science couch question?
Today's question comes from @RyanLaser, who asks, "Can I eat it?" Which
Just
I guess
what,
means
carbon?
carbon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes, because we've talked about so many times you can eat it.
So, well, if you didn't eat any carbon, you would die.
Well, sure. I mean, you could do it for a while.
Pretty quick. Yeah,
You could spend a day
the
not
same
eating
amount of
carbon.
time.
I'm on a carbon
Yeah, the same
cleanse
amount of
today.
time that you could eat. Yeah, survive eating nothing. Yeah. It's a necessary ingredient for being alive.
Yes. And it can be dangerous. Like, that's the other thing. You can eat it. You need to eat it. You can also just swallow it and it'll pass right through you. So if you eat a diamond, it's just going to pass right through you.
Yeah,
You'll
that'll be
poop it out.
fine. But there's ways to eat carbon where it would be bad for you.
Yeah. And there's always a chance, like, so I fell down a rabbit hole of diamond dust, and there was a lot of anecdotal stuff about grinding up diamonds and then feeding it to people as poison because the shards would cut up
Slice
your
you up.
intestines a little bit. There wasn't any, like, there weren't a lot of confirmed deaths. It was more like,
You
might as well-
think maybe that just sounds cool, and so
Yeah.
people wrote about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
During the Renaissance, they were like, ha ha ha, my evil plot. I'm going to assassinate someone by
There's
grinding
lots
up
of-
diamond.
Lots of cheaper poisons out there.
Yeah, I feel like we know about a bunch of ways to let people kick it.
Yeah, including plenty of other carbon-containing compounds. You got plenty of toxins that are made naturally by plants and animals, fungi, and you don't want to eat those because those will be bad for you. Yeah, so can I eat it? Sometimes, if it's food.
Yes.
If it's a pizza, yeah. If
Yeah.
it's a,
Yeah, I don't know. Can I eat that baked bread?
Ooh,
I bet
that-
it would
that
cut
hard-
your mouth
that hard
up so
foam?
bad. You know, you have too much of a
Yeah.
toasted piece of toast and it hurts you.
it'd be sharp, probably. It'd be like swallowing a Mr. Clean magic eraser, probably. Like sandpaper your guts.
I don't want to do that. So yes, eat carbon, but not
Only
every
sometimes.
carbon.
So, yeah.
Only sometimes. If you want to ask the Science Couch your question, you can follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents, where we'll tweet out topics for upcoming episodes every week. Or you can join the SciShow Tangents Patreon and ask us on our Discord. Thanks to Emily17 on Discord and at Lululo715 and everybody else who asked us questions for this episode. If you like this show and you want to help us out, it's so easy to do that. Please do it. First, you can go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/SciShowTangents. There's a bunch of amazing stuff that you get access to, and you help us continue making the show. Second, you can leave us a review and let people know how much you like our show. That helps us also know what you like about it. You can tell us what you think we should do differently, like Sam's dad, who gave us a great piece of advice there years into making the podcast. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, just
Tell people about us.
Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Ceri Riley.
And I've been Sam Schultz.
SciShow Tangents is created by all of us and produced by Sam Schultz. Our editor is Seth Glicksman. Our story editor is Alex Billow. Our social media organizer is Julia Buzz-Bezio. Our editorial assistant is Deboki Chakravarti. Our sound design is, of course, by Joseph Tuna-Medish. Our executive producers are Caitlin Hoffmeister and me, Hank Green, and we couldn't make any of this without our patrons on Patreon. Thank you, and remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted. But one more thing. Activated charcoal is a super porous form of carbon where each particle has a huge surface area. So it's really good at adsorption, which is where the surface of one substance sticks to other molecules like poisons in the human gut, dissolved organic substances in water, or even gas particles in air, including some, quote, odoriferous rectal gases, aka stinky fart compounds. So naturally, there are products out there like underwear made of carbon fibers or activated charcoal pads that you can insert into the underwear to help people keep their gassy butts odor-free.
We could eliminate fart stink from the world, and we choose not to.
Yeah.
Why?
We do.
You gotta pay to play.
Yeah. Pay to play underpants. They should give it to astronauts, though. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's got to be so stinky in that tin can.
But you
oh my
can.
God.
But like we said earlier, you can pick a corner, and you're like, "That's the fart corner. Everybody go over there."
It's
and
gonna
just fart
stay
in that
there.
corner, and it's all gonna be in there. It's fine. You can close the lid of you can fart into a box and close the lid, and that's just your fart box.
Can you imagine being like the one astronaut with the stinkiest farts and everybody knows it?
Yeah.
Like there's only so many people up there at any time, and so everybody must know what each other's farts smell like.
That fart is directly next to your butt. You farted that fart. There's no other person who could have done it.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to SciShow Tangents, the lightly competitive science knowledge showcase. I'm your host, Hank Green, and joining me this week, as always, is science expert Ceri Riley.
Hi.
And the resident everyman, Sam Schultz.
Just hear those sleigh bells ringling, jing, jing, jing.
Oh, thanks for the
A
reminder.
croonin'. Wow.
What are you getting for your partner this Christmas?
Oh. I walked into a trap. We're recording this on November 4th, and I don't know.
Let me hit you with another one then. I just went
Okay.
to see James Acaster in Seattle about a month ago. And and it was absolute delight. And he talked a lot about like the needs of the sort of 5-year-old version of him that lives inside of him still and still has a lot of needs that he has to take care of. So what, if you had a chance, would you buy 5-year-old you for Christmas?
This is another
Ooh.
trap. I still buy a lot of toys and stuff.
Exact same thing I want now.
Yeah. Sarah, you go first. I'm going to think about it.
I also buy the toys that I want.
Let me go first.
Yeah,
first.
please go first,
okay.
Hank.
Yeah. Because here's what I do. You know how you can get like slime, like kids can get slime, and then they put their hands in and they play with it?
Yeah.
I want that, but I want like at least 5 gallons. I think that the amount of slime that you get is like by far not enough. I want to be able to like sink my whole head into the slime. I want to like put my arms in it. I want to like I want to go outside and just like be a slime monster. I want to put it over my 5-year-old little body and run around.
Hank, you want to know what? I was going to also say slime or some kind of goo. Because I feel like when you grow up, you're like, if I get the goo, it's just going to get ruined or it's going to get on my carpet and then my wife's going to be pissed. When you're 5, you don't got a wife to worry about. You're going to be slinging slime everywhere.
Yeah, I want to put slime on me and then get on a bike. Just ride around the neighborhood.
I think you both could achieve this dream. Get a kiddie pool, get a lot of like a big 5-gallon bucket of Elmer's glue and some borax.
It's true.
I bet you could buy a
do
lot of slime on Amazon. You could probably subscribe to slime on Amazon, like you can subscribe to bottle caps.
Slime of the month. Yeah.
I've actually even I've got like mutuals on TikTok who are slime makers, so I could I could DM them and be like, hey, how much could I get a bulk slime discount? I'm sure a lot of it's just the packaging process of like getting it into the little can. Let's skip that step. Send me the bucket.
The postage on that would be insane, though.
Well, maybe they'll just put it in their trunk and drive it over.
That's a real Santa delivering it on Christmas morning, too. So also very exciting for 5-year-old you.
It's been tricky for Santa since slime happened because it's so heavy. Got to carry
and so
a lot
messy.
of slime. It gets all over that. Everything to do with Santa is made of like crushed velvet, and that does not mix well.
That don't come out. That don't come out.
No. He has a lot more outfits now than back in the old day where he just keep re-wearing it.
Okay, now I'm picturing 5-year-old Ceri running around, being happy and cute and inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
What does little Ceri want?
I feel like I would want unlimited time in some sort of like insectarium, like rent a museum for myself, maybe just Biosphere 2, but if it was safe for kids, like just running around.
You want Sarah, I think my big dream is a bucket of slime, and Sarah's like, I want Biosphere 2.
Yeah.
I want to do a Pauly Shore movie.
5-year-old Ceri would just want to run around unattended and explore.
You want a bunch of bugs.
Yeah, I had so many like paper notebooks that I made where I would walk around our yard and like tape sticks and leaves into it. And so if I could just do that, but with more cool stuff than what I could find in our yard, I think I would be happy.
I'm so happy for all of our little 5-year-old selves. If only
Mhm.
we could get out of childhood free of trauma, I'm sure that none of us would be so driven and
Yeah, that's what we are. We're driven.
All right. Every week here on Tangent, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with science facts while also trying to stay on topic. Our panelists are playing for glory and for Hank Bucks, which I will be awarding as we play. And at the end of the episode, one of them will be crowned the winner. Now, as always, we introduce this week's topic with the traditional science poem. This week, it's from me. I like to have a drink sometimes when I'm out with my friends, a couple of beers, a couple of shots to celebrate weekends. But another couple shots from there, I know I've made a mistake. I'm not having fun anymore. My body needs a break. I've got my Uber headed home. It'll be here any minute. The cemeteries are full of folks who didn't know their limit. It's the dose that makes the poison, the quantity that counts. Anything will kill you if you have the right amount. I like to go on Twitter. It's an easy thing to do. Open it up and see what fresh hell's waiting there for you. But then I close it down and have breakfast with my wife. Playing Wordle over coffee is a great part of my life. If I didn't take some breaks, I don't know if I'd be alive. That much Twitter all day long, could anyone survive? It's the dose that makes the poison, the quantity that counts. Anything will kill you if you have the right amount. The topic for the day is poison.
Up in the air as to whether or not Twitter will still exist by the time this airs.
I may have quit by then. That's
Yeah.
certainly possible.
Mhm.
Or at least scaled back my presence. So, poison. Am I right, Ceri? It's everything as long as you have enough.
I would say that anything can be considered, you can have toxic amounts of anything. I don't know if scientists would look at everything in the world and be like,
I would call that a poison. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would they look at Twitter and be like, I would call that a poison? Probably. Probably
sociologists say yes.
What about a specific substance that interferes with the body's ability to do body stuff?
So toxin is the overall thing. And I think it's like interferes with body stuff at relatively small amounts
Mm-hmm.
is how I would put it. Is the amount of the thing needed is relatively small, which is what makes it dangerous and toxic as opposed to just like a food that we eat or water that we drink or Twitter that we scroll on. The difference that a lot of people like to draw between poison and venom is how they enter your body. So toxin is just like if you want to talk about bad things that are out there, things that can harm
that's
you
nice.
in small doses.
Because you're always accidentally saying poison or venom when you mean venom or poison. But if you say toxin, you're good every time.
Yes.
Nice.
That's my strategy. That's my science communication tip for everyone listening. Whenever I'm a little bit unsure, I use toxin instead. And I'm like, I know no one's gonna call me out for that.
I almost texted you guys to be like, should we just call this episode Toxin? Because I'm having a hell of a time making mine about poison.
We can make this episode in spirit about toxin. unless you
Poison's a
did
sexier
specifically
word,
poison.
though. We're going to
okay.
keep it poison.
How's venom compared to poison and
Venom's
sexy
cool,
scale?
too. Toxin sucks compared to the other
Okay.
two.
Toxin's too technical. Toxin's the nerd version, and then you get poisons and
Poison.
venoms.
Venom.
So
yeah.
poison you eat. If you ingest it, then it's poisonous. And venom eats you or is injected somewhere into your body, then it's venom. So like a sting, a bite can be venomous. A berry can be poisonous.
What if I swallow a bee and it stings my tummy?
I was having the same question earlier.
If a bee stung inside your tummy, I would still call it a venom because the sting is the method of delivery. If it dissolved in your tummy and then you went, ooh, I feel sick, then that's a poison.
I got bee poisoning.
And then there was a 2014 paper that I was reading that when you get to like the middle zone of poisons and venoms, there are animals that spray. And so it's like, well, you're not quite injecting it. It's not a stinger. It's not a bite, but it's not as passive as poison. Like you're not necessarily being eaten. You're like, you have this poison that you create. You have this toxin that you create and are halfway active. But when it sprays on you, then that's when it absorbs into your skin or something.
Ultimately, there is a line here where it gets fuzzy.
Also, did they name these two things first, and then later they were like, "Oh, maybe that's kind of the same thing."
It feels a little like that to me. It feels a little like we sort of retroactively had to apply definitions to these
We already
things.
got these two really cool words, though, so we can't really get rid of
We
either
can't
of
get
them.
rid of them.
Let's
They
just
are
make up a
both great
bullshit
words.
definition for one of them.
Well, they kind of had a difference from their root words. So poison comes from potare, which means to drink, and so poison is very in the potion family. Like you drink something, and then it's bad for you, and then you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a borrowing from French. So I don't know, poisson. I don't speak French.
Don't that mean fish? Isn't one of those words fish?
It does sound like the fish word.
Yeah. Be careful, French people.
Don't make
Could
that
be.
mistake. Yeah, poisson is fish in French. What is poison in French? Also, they're very similar. It is poison. It is just spelled the exact same way. Do I know how to pronounce it? Absolutely not. Poison.
Poison.
I thought that was Catherine. I thought Catherine was standing there with you. Just writing it.
She's always here listening to us podcast
Yeah.
live, but only
What a-
1/3 of it.
What a horrible realization.
Venom comes from Latin venenum, which is poison.
Banana.
So yes, it means something, but then I think it evolved to something that was secreted by an animal or transferred by biting.
Venom means
Poison.
poison.
Yeah.
This is
Or
bullshit.
just probably means toxin. But
Probably means talk. Yeah, probably more
Well, they may not have-
accurately means.
yeah, they might not have even sort of understood that a venom was a thing. It was like a snake bite. Like the problem wasn't the thing the snake injected in you; it was the snake. You know,
Yeah.
snakes are bad. Things that hurt are like that's the animal's thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas poison is oftentimes something that people do to people. All right, I feel informed on our topic. We're going to move on now to the quiz portion of our show, and that means we're going to be playing Dead or Not Dead. It's a special new tangent game. I'm going to tell you the name of an animal, and you have to imagine that you are that animal. Then I will be offering you something that might sound potentially appetizing to you as said animal. As a catch, though, it could be poison. It's up to you to decide whether or not that meal will leave you dead or not dead.
I love this.
All right, so you are, for this first one, a black-headed grosbeak, a bird found in the western part of North America. Its song has been described by allaboutbirds.org as like a tipsy robin welcoming spring. So they're having a good time over there.
Yeah, that sounds
And you might migrate down to central Mexico when the weather gets cold. I'm offering you an insect that you might run into on your path south that has distinctive black and orange wings. Would this leave you dead or not dead?
Well, black and orange. That seems like the don't eat me color.
Does
But then there's other guys who pretend to do the don't eat me color. So it really is kind of up in the air. I think dead. I think a gross beak shouldn't be messing with that kind of thing. I wouldn't were I one. I'd eat a nice berry.
You logicked
instead.
it all out. I would say as a grosbeak, I'm brave. Why am I called a grosbeak?
Because you got gross stuff in your beak.
Yeah, I got gross stuff in there.
I think it's actually from French for big, but I'm just
Oh, okay. Well, if I have a big beak, I can crunch that bug. I'll crunch it. So I'm going to say not dead.
The answer is not dead because I offered you a monarch butterfly.
Oh,
I know that's not what you were thinking when you heard orange and black insect, but that
is?
is what it is, which is poisonous to many animals thanks to its ability to consume another poison, milkweed. Milkweed is the same type of poison that comes from the poison arrow tree, and it can cause cardiac arrest in humans and animals besides humans. These compounds interfere with the sodium-potassium pumps in your muscles. That messes with your heartbeat. But monarch butterflies are able to consume milkweed thanks to a set of mutations that enable the sodium pump to function despite the compounds. And it turns out that the black-headed grosbeak also has a similar set of mutations as do several other monarch butterfly consumers, including the Mexican black-eared deer mouse. This mutation is an example of convergent evolution. It comes in handy for the black-headed grosbeak, which eats monarch butterflies as it migrates south. So it would kill you, and it's happened in the butterfly, and in a bird, and in a mouse.
If you ate ate the bird, would you die?
If a human ate a bird that was just chock full of butterflies, it's just like the butterflies just gushing
But the
out.
bird
I
on
don't
it,
know,
the
maybe.
bird on its own is not poisonous. Eh?
No.
Okay.
I don't
okay.
think so. But maybe. I haven't tried.
Next question.
It's,
You're Hank.
it's not in my list of facts.
Yeah.
Round number 2. You are a yellow spotted monitor lizard that lives in Australia. You are brown with various light-colored spots, and you live on the ground digging holes to nest in. But you're also great at climbing, and you can sprint on your hind legs. You have long, forked, bluish tongue that you use to look for prey by sensing odor molecules. This sounds like a grand old time for you. I'm offering you a large, brown, warty toad that was brought to Australia in the 1930s to help control pests on sugarcane farms, but has unsurprisingly spread beyond the farms. Would this leave you dead or not dead?
So toads, I feel same way. I understand why this game is so hard because they're the guys that are poisonous. There are plenty of toads that have the toxic mucus on their outsides, and then there are probably some guys that just pretend to. Or maybe my blue tongue has some sort of antitoxin, anti-poison,
Oh, the
antidote.
blue tongue could be a clue.
I'm gonna say dead. Toads, don't mess with them.
They got these big, like, they have a Chad type look to them. They're walking around.
The
They're
toads or
walking
the lizards?
around. The lizards. They're walking around. They're like, oh, delicious lizard. Oh. And then, yeah, they're going to croak. They're going to eat anything in their path, and these toads are no good for them. They're dead.
The answer is dead. As a monitor lizard, it would take you less than 30 seconds of having that toad in your mouth to die.
Whoa.
And scientists have reported that 90% of yellow-spotted monitors have died in areas that have been taken over by cane toads. That's a bummer. However, it turns out that smaller juvenile toads are slightly less poisonous to monitor lizards, a fact that scientists decided to use to see if they could teach monitor lizards to not eat cane toads. So they presented young cane toads to monitor lizards via a fishing pole, and when the lizard ate the small toads, they would get a little sick, but not so much to leave permanent damage, and that appeared to be enough to convince the monitor lizards to not give them a second try.
Don't what they got to go tell their friends or something?
Well, no, you just got to hit every one of them.
Okay.
One at a time, baby toads. That's a wild way to do it. I would think maybe you could like make a meatloaf that looks like a toad and just like make it taste real bad. But no, they just find the baby ones, put them on a fishing pole and semi-poison a lizard.
Make it a little
Science!
puppet, a little toad puppet, and go, what? Scare the lizard so they
Yeah.
run away.
Yeah.
That's how I would do it.
Round number 3, our final round. You are the African crested rat, roughly the size of a rabbit with black and white fur that makes you look kind of like a skunk. Scientists used to think that you lived alone, but it turns out that you're social and you like to purr at your fellow crested rat friends. I'm offering you the bark of a small tree that has broad leaves and berries that taste sweet but slightly bitter when ripe. Would this leave you dead or not dead?
I think we
What?
both know the answer to this, don't we? I think we both.
I was gonna put on a show for the podcast, Sam. I was gonna
What,
be
do you,
working
for
do you,
SciShow,
do you
Hank.
know the answer? I thought you were joking.
I'm pretty sure this is the thing that makes them poisonous, right? The thing it eats and it grooms itself or something, and then the rat is imbued with poison powers. So he's fine.
Yeah, this
is that right?
This is definitely the poisonous rodent like that exists. It's very metal. It has spikes. It is poisonous. I don't know what gives it its poison though. A lot of times it's insects like frogs
Oh.
and birds that are poisonous. Get them from insects, but this one could get it from bark.
I just feel like you
I don't know.
wrote an episode of SciShow that I animated about this subject. Is that the case?
Probably yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because then because
But then I
I've
put
known
that
about
information
this for a
where
while.
the information goes, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
to the ether, to
Yeah.
the space between the worlds.
Then it became a lingering fun fact in my brain where
Yeah.
come time for this episode, I was like, I think I know about a poisonous
Oh
rodent.
shoot, now I'm doubting
Mhm.
myself. I think he's okay though.
Yeah, the bark, it's fine.
The answer, indeed, is not dead. In fact, as you were saying, you probably should chew on this bark if you are this rodent, because this is the poison arrow tree, which I mentioned earlier, and it's very toxic to mammals. It can lead to vomiting, difficulty breathing, and cardiac arrest at high doses. It can also be used as heart medicines at lower doses. But, you know what's also poisonous? The fur of the African crested rat, because the rat likes to chew on this bark. When researchers studied the rat in captivity, they watched them take their spit after chewing and apply it to their fur, coating it in the poison. And they hypothesized that the rats are able to tolerate the toxins from the bark because of their 4-chambered stomachs and all the gut bacteria that can break this stuff down. And then they just wipe the poison on their bodies.
Cool.
Also, the berries, when ripe, are not poisonous. Only the bark
Oh.
of the tree, not of the rats. The rats,
They're so-
berries don't mess with. Well, that means that Sam has 2 points and Ceri got all 3 of those right. Next up, we're going to take a short break. Then it will be time for the fact. Hello and welcome back, everybody. It's time for the Fact Off. Our panelists have brought science facts to present to me in an attempt to blow my mind. And after they've presented their facts, I will judge them and award Hank Bucks any way I see fit. But to decide who goes first, I have a trivia question for you. Throughout history, people have found ways to repurpose poisons into medicine, like Botox, for example, which is made from a toxin produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum. The toxin is responsible for botulism, which is very bad and dangerous, and it targets nerves and can lead to paralysis and death. Clostridium botulinum was discovered towards the end of the 19th century by Professor Emile van Ermengem at the University of Ghent. A group of Belgian musicians had contracted botulism after performing at a funeral and eating smoked ham.
Oh,
Three of the musicians died, and their organs, along with the smoked ham, were sent to Ermengem for his bacterial expertise. How many musicians, 3 of them died, how many got sick with botulism?
What? This is not where I thought this question was going to go.
I was going to be like, how few grams of botulism can it be and you still die? No. Give me a number of musicians.
How many musicians do you need at a funeral is the real question.
Yeah.
I would think 3 would be plenty, but
Maybe it was a funeral for a really rich guy and it was like a full orchestra because this was back in the day. But how many, the hams couldn't have all been bad because it didn't say it, just one ham. So how many hams can a full orchestra eat? I think a full orchestra could eat 7 hams. So what's 7 divided by 50? How many people are in a full orchestra? 50. What's 7 divided by 50?
Okay, you could have just said how many people can one ham feed. It would have been a more direct path to the same answer.
like 8, 56 divided
Hank,
by
leave
7.
me alone.
Sorry, I'm just letting you know.
7. It's the answer is 7. 7.14. So how many musicians got sick? 7.14 musicians.
And 3 of them
One
died.
person just got a little bit, pukey.
I think Belgian musicians love to smoke ham. So I think everyone is in on the ham. I think
Well, everyone's
20,
in on the ham. Okay.
I think all the ham was bad. I think they were all going ham for the ham, and then
And they put all the ham in a big thing and they mixed it all up so you don't know which
Yeah.
ham is which. Okay.
yeah, they just had a big ham platter. Everyone was grabbing from who knows what.
Uh-huh.
So I think 20 of them got sick.
The answer is 34.
Oh my God. That's horrible.
So I don't know how, but it was definitely more than one ham, unless they were all having very small bites.
They're passing the
clearly-
ham around.
Take a lick. Take a lick. Everybody take a lick.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks.
So, yeah. All right. So, Sarah, that means you get to go first or not, whichever you want.
I'll go first. I'll dive into the smoked ham abyss. Ants are tidy critters, as we've talked about on this podcast before. Maybe me, I talk about ants a lot, I think. But they can't go to the grocery store and buy some soap or disinfecting wipes like we can. So instead, they have to rely on a hyper-local organic cleaning product, poison brewed in their own butts.
Oh,
More precisely, the backmost butt segment of an ant's body is called the gaster, and certain subfamilies use a multi-purpose hole called an acidopore at the tip of their gaster to spray a toxic substance as a weapon or a defense mechanism. And this hole also connects to the anus and the pheromone gland, in case you were curious. So, 3-purpose hole.
Cool.
Scientists have analyzed these poisons and noticed that a major component of them is formic acid, which makes sense because formica is Latin for ant, which can be corrosive to lots of things, from human eyes and skin to bacterial membranes or even rival ants. But they're not just spraying creatures they don't like. This is a multi-purpose poison. The species Lasius neglectus has been observed spraying poison inside their nests or any nest boxes created experimentally, including on their larvae, to kill off pathogens like bacteria or fungi. And no, they are not worried about this disinfectant acid burning their soft, fragile little babies because, as a 2018 paper showed, this species' larvae are swaddled in silk cocoons that act as protection. Sometimes these ants also suck poison straight into their mouths from their acidopores and groom the cocoons to remove any pesky fungal spores. And in a 2020 study, another species called Camptonotus floridinus was observed gargling and or swallowing their own poison after eating food or drinking water, basically trying to kill any pathogens before they can fester and multiply in their little tummies. Across these projects, there are various experimental ways to prevent the ants from spreading their poison to see what happened, such as supergluing parts of their bodies shut or making them really cold so they'd stop moving. Just a little sad. But whenever the ants couldn't disinfect with their poison, they had lower survival rates. So we think it actually does something.
It wasn't just that their butts were super glued shut.
Yeah.
I feel like that might also lower my survival rate.
Your butt and jaw super glued shut, but you never know. We think it's the disinfectant because we use toxic substances to clean all the time, and like even our immune system uses destroying particles sometimes. So it makes sense that plenty of non-human animals do too. And I guess in nature, mildly poisoning yourself is worth it if it means you stay alive longer.
Wow. Windex ants. I got really distracted wondering one question. What is the hole with the most uses? The most? Is Ceri the most?
You mean of any animal?
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel like it's
we're just gonna put that one out there because I don't think that we're gonna have an answer to that question.
No.
That's definitely right. So I'm gonna toss it out to the audience. What's the hole with the most uses?
Yes.
Sam wants to know. At SciShow
let me know.
Tangents on Twitter.
Yeah, tell me.
Maybe. If Twitter exists.
Oh no.
Yeah.
All right, wild. Ceri, that's very weird. Sam, what do you got?
Ceri and Hank, let me teach you a little something about viruses. And if I'm wrong at any point, please tell me, because this was really hard. When you're a virus, you sort of have to pick whether you're going to go after cells with nuclei or cells without nuclei. True so far? Yeah. And you're pretty much locked into that choice. Like you want to infect a bacteria? Well, you, my friend, are a bacteriophage, and you aren't going to be able to go after cells with nuclei, like, say, maybe spider cells. And sometimes when you're a virus multiplying in cells, you tend to pick up things in those cells, like DNA. Like, let's say that you're a bacteriophage. You probably got some bacteria DNA floating around in you on account of all the bacteria that you infect. But assumedly, you couldn't have any spider DNA, right?
Yeah.
Am I right so far? Okay.
Yeah, if you're a bacteriophage, no reason to have some spider DNA in you.
But what do we do when we assume, my friends? You see, in 2016, researchers at Vanderbilt who are sequencing the genome of a bacteriophage called WO found DNA that matches DNA that black widows use to make a toxin in their venom. But what the heck? If these viruses only target bacteria, how did it get spider DNA inside of it? WO's target is a bacteria called Wolbachia, and Wolbachia infects arthropods like black widows. And when it infects arthropods, it hides inside cell membranes, safe and sound from bacteriophages. And similar to a virus, as a bacteria is doing all that slipping in and out of cells, it's going to get some junk stuck to it along the way, including DNA from its arthropod hosts. And as previously mentioned, viruses end up with DNA in them too, and they don't care if that DNA comes from a bacteria or a black widow. So now you've got a bacteriophage with black widow toxin DNA, which is what they found, and it's the first time that animal DNA has ever been found in a bacteriophage. So scientists aren't totally sure if these viruses use the toxin, but the toxin makes holes in cell membranes, and these viruses do have to get inside of arthropod cell membranes to get to Wolbachia. So it seems sort of like they do use it. And in this case, I think the toxin would be considered a poison, thus validating this as a poison fact. But there's also a bit of a chicken and an egg situation here that scientists are also looking into. Did the bacteriophage get the ability to make cell-damaging poison from the spider DNA passed to it from a bacteria, or did spiders get the ability to make cell-damaging venom from bacteriophage DNA passed to it from a bacteria? Nobody knows, obviously.
But there are only those two options. So it's one of those two, and either one is very cool.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And WO also contains DNA sequences that are used in animal cells to sense pathogens and trigger cell death and avoid immune responses. So while it's way more likely that this virus has just collected a bunch of junk over the eons, it and other viruses like it might have taught our cells a lot of tricks that make life possible.
Ceri, I have a question for you, which is which way is cooler for it to get this DNA? Is it cooler for the spider to have gotten a toxin from a bacteriophage? Or is it cooler for the bacteriophage to have gotten it from a bacteria that got it from the spider?
I think spider from bacteriophage is cooler because then spiders were just harmless at one point, and then
I think they have more than just that one toxin. I like that it got it from the spider because it couldn't get it directly from the spider. It would have to get it from the bacteria that got from the spider.
Right.
Which is wild for genes to just be like, wee, I'll go wherever. Well, now I have to choose which is the cooler, weirder fact, and Ceri's got a point ahead already. Will it be ants disinfecting their whole situation with their butt poison, including their insides and their outsides and their nests? Or researchers finding spider DNA in a bacteriophage, but how? These are both very good. I think that Ceri's going to pull away from this one, but only because she came into it with the lead.
Those points used to not mean anything. I'm offended that they mean something.
They're a tiebreaker. They're really a tiebreaker, is what they're there for.
You used to give us like 400 points arbitrarily for our facts. You've changed.
Well, look, Sam, you got 400, and Ceri got 400, and she got 401.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
Cha-ching.
Everybody gets 400. All right. Now it's time to ask the Science Couch, where we've got a listener question for our couch of finally home scientific times.
Jan Rhett Sammys on Discord and Emily Naidbala on YouTube ask, is there poisonous venom?
I mean, if you put it in your blood, if you put it in your interstitial tissues and it's doing damage, you put it in your tummy, it's very likely to also do damage. I'm sure that there are venoms that aren't poisonous that you're in the acidic environment of your stomach, they'd be pretty immediately inactivated, but there's got to be lots that you wouldn't want to put very much of in you. And also, as I said in the poem, you have enough of anything, it's going to get you uncomfortable. Did that make sense, Ceri? How did I do?
The message of SciShow Tangents is do not drink venom. Do not eat it. Please don't.
Just go to one of those places where they make anti-venom and they're constantly milking snakes and take a shot. Don't do that.
Don't do that, please.
That's rude, yeah.
But if you want to get really, really technical about it, venom, because it goes into your bloodstream, that's more an easier distribution pathway. So venoms often contain big proteins that can get denatured. If you and proteins getting denatured is just when there's enough heat or a molecular reaction for some reason, then they unfold and then they can't do the thing. So a toxic protein would no longer be toxic and mess with your cells and be the poison anymore. Venoms do have different toxicity whether you inject them or you take them orally. And researchers do look into this, mostly on mice. It's always mice of injecting things versus feeding them to them and to test. And the main thing is that we just don't really test venoms, eating a lot of different types of venoms. But when we do, there are a couple things we've learned. And so that's what I found. One study tested 17 different snake venoms just to see whether you could heat them and denature the proteins. And all but 5 of the 17, so 12 of them after heating, lost basically all of their activity. So
they're just food now. That's just protein. That's like eating a steak.
And it's just, I wouldn't say that, but say it's like some dirty water, maybe. Not something particularly nutritious either, but there are certain beverages that integrate venom inside them. So snake wine is prepared by steeping a whole venomous snake in rice wine. And there has been at least one person who was admitted to the hospital because his blood stopped clotting after drinking snake wine. Other people have emerged from it anecdotally fine. I was looking at lab protocols, and it seems like 70% ethanol is the standard cleaning supply for any toxin venom waste. So I would say if you're making alcohol out of venom, I would make it at least 70% ABV, which I don't think wine is necessarily.
I don't think so.
No.
You would want like a distilled grain and then submerge your snake in it.
Yeah.
And then you can say you've drunk
You can make
venom.
snake Everclear,
Ugh.
but you cannot make snake wine.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
but-
It sounds like it's going to cause a lot of problems.
Mhm.
It sounds bad.
Yeah.
Everything sounds bad, but
Mhm.
like high enough concentrations of ethanol might help denature the proteins. Like that's the idea too.
Also, would take care of any bacteria that might be growing. Which
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't like the idea of.
And then the only other fact I have is that tetrodotoxin, which is mostly known for pufferfish. So if you eat poorly prepared pufferfish, where the gland that contains the tetrodotoxin has been severed and leaks into the rest of the flesh, then you will be poisoned. But tetrodotoxin is also used as a venom by other species. And so there are, biologically speaking, some species that use the exact same compound as a venom and a poison, depending on where you look in the animal kingdom. So yes, even without drinking snake venom, there is poisonous venom out there because they're all toxins. They all fall under the same umbrella, and some animals just deliver the same toxin in a different way.
Cool. Well, if you want to ask the Science Couch your question, you can follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents, where we'll tweet out topics for upcoming episodes every week. Or you can join the SciShow Tangents Patreon and ask us on our Discord. Thank you to Broken Thumbs on Discord and at Reality-3 and everybody else who asked us your questions for this episode. If you like this show and you want to help us out, it's really easy to do that. First, you can go to patreon.com/SciShow Tangents. Become a patron. You get access to things like our newsletter and our bonus episodes. And we have a tier where you can get a special in-episode shout-out, which is the tier that patron John Pollock subscribed at. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Second, you can leave us a review wherever you listen. That's super helpful, and it helps us know what you like about the show. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, just tell people about us. Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Ceri Riley.
And I've been Sam Schultz.
SciShow Tangents is created by all of us and produced by Sam Schultz. Our editor is Seth Lixman. Our story editor is Alan Billow. Our social media organizer is Julia Buzz Bazzaio. Our editorial assistant is Debunked Chakravarti. Our sound design is by Joseph Kuna-Medish. Our executive producers are Caitlin Hoffmeister and me, Hank Green. And of course, we couldn't make any of this without our patrons on Patreon. Thank you. And remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire.
But one more thing. Goats can eat plants like poison oak without being harmed by the urushiol oils that can cause horrible rashes on humans. And surprisingly, it doesn't seem like researchers know how goats protect themselves, like if there are proteins in their spit that help. But an article from 1992 found that in goats that were only fed poison oak for 10 days, over 90% of the urushiol from the leaves was absorbed or broken down during digestion, leaving less than 9% of it in their poop and none in their milk or pee. So, if you use goats for landscaping, there's probably no need to worry about poison poop. But don't roll around in it anyway, please.
I mean, that's still like 9%. Seems like it's plenty.
Yeah.
If
How the heck
it's like
does it-
exclusively urushiol eating.
Where is it going? It's not in their milk or their pee, and you can eat goats. What's going on here?
It's probably turned into different It's broken down chemically. I
Okay,
think is what
okay.
it's saying.
They're not storing it
What's
up in
the-
some kind of sack or something.
That'd be great, though. That's
be
how
pretty
the
cool.
African crested rat would do it.
Yeah.
Just have a big urushiol sack, and it would spray
Goats.
it on predators. And I'd have it on my shoulder, and I'd get it to do it to people who are rude to me at the grocery store.
Yeah. Don't let goats and them rats meet each other, or else they'll start getting ideas.
Yeah, they'll whisper to each other.
They'll transfer some genes, and we'll all be in lots of trouble.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Welcome to SciShow Tangents, is the lightly competitive science knowledge showcase. I'm your host, Hank Green. And joining me this week, as always, is science expert Ceri Riley.
Hello.
And our resident everyman, Sam Schultz.
Hello.
So how are we feeling about New Year's resolutions in the scientific community? Because I've heard that they're not much. There's not much that recommends them.
I thought you meant like we, as the three of us, how are we feeling about New Year's resolutions for us and our brains in this general?
How I feel about it is that the evidence suggests that this isn't the way to do it. So I'm trying to not, even though my brain says you should probably do that.
Mm-hmm.
Have some goals.
I think you told me this last year, and so last year I didn't make any goals, and I
How'd
kind
it
of
go?
felt bad about it. I kind of felt bad about it all year.
Well, don't worry. You would have
No.
felt bad when you didn't meet your goals.
Yeah, so I guess you just feel bad no matter what you do.
We should
Or
stop
you could
ending
set
years.
little goals.
Little
Yeah,
goals.
I think I might make.
This is a good
I think
idea.
I might make some this year. I think I might
Super
That's what
achievable things.
Yeah.
That's my general strategy. Is like whenever I feel a burst of motivation, you know the one.
Yeah.
Like January, it's never it. January, I'm tired. It's cold. I just want to be warm. But like April, that's a good time. October for me,
Ooh,
great time. I
interesting.
love the beginning of October.
An
for some
October
reason.
resolution.
There's kind of that breeze in the air, and it's bracing you, and
Yeah,
You
it's a
just
little
can-
bit
yeah.
colder, so then I
Uh-huh.
don't feel like I'm hot all the time, and so I can
Yeah,
exercise without
agree.
sweating too much.
Uh-huh.
So I recommend resolutions intermittently, just when you feel like
Throughout
you
the
can do
year.
it.
so we need Halloween resolutions.
Yeah. Yes. Turn your favorite holiday into a motivational one also,
Yeah.
Sam.
What's the smallest thing that still counts as a resolution? So it can't be something I'm already doing, but it has to be like so achievable that I'm definitely going to achieve it. This is what I'm looking for. I have one. Mine is that whenever I get a haircut, I want to leave the haircutty place with an appointment for my next haircut, which is something
Oh,
that I have heard a lot of people do,
Yeah.
but I have never done.
I kind of feel like it's way weirder that you don't schedule your next one before you leave. It's
I
like
don't know.
when
I've
you leave, they're
never
probably
done
like,
it.
"Did that guy just leave without scheduling his next one? It's like, why?"
They think I'm so strange.
Yeah.
He's like, what a weirdo. He's a YouTuber, right? That's what they say.
That explains it.
They're like, he comes back, so he didn't hate his haircut. But
Yeah.
I think this is achievable for you. I think you can do this.
I'm just going to do that. That's the thing that I'm going to change about my lifestyle, and it's very boring.
I
what I'm
think those
looking
are the
for.
best kinds of resolutions because those are the sustainable changes.
Sustainable
Yeah.
changes. This is what we're looking for. I'm not trying to revolutionize my life. Just trying to make one thing a little easier.
Mhm.
Every week here on SciShow Tangents, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with science facts while also trying to stay on topic. Our panelists are playing for glory, but they're also playing for Hank Bucks, and one of them will win at the end of the episode. Now, as always, we're going to introduce this week's topic with the traditional science poem. This week it's from me. I'm sorry if this seems icky, but everything's a little bit sticky. Particles, they stick together like hooks in a bird's feather. There's a tiny invisible force tether. Describing it's a little bit tricky. Now, different particles stick different amounts, and depending on that, they can stick or bounce or slide past each other like a basket of balls, and some particles barely stick at all. Sticking, sliding, and bouncing mass is solid, liquid, or finally, gas. With enough energy, it's a no-brainer. They bounce off each other and fill their container. Gas, 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 gas. Gas, 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 gas. I felt like there needed like a last couplet to round out the poem, but I couldn't
Uh-huh.
figure it out. I feel like it was done, but like in terms of
What's
the
it?
vibe, it wasn't done.
Yeah.
So I just said gas a bunch of times.
Forget physics class or whatever. Just listen to that
Yeah.
poem. You can skip
That's
all
right.
of, like,
It's all
10th
done.
grade or something.
I
Yeah.
did it. I did all of 10th grade. I did states of matter. Plasma, don't even think about it. That's a different
Nah.
thing.
Don't worry about it. It's for
Don't worry
TVs
about
only, right?
That's right.
Plasma.
And blood.
That's different stuff, right? Is that two different stuff? The plasma and blood,
Yes.
plasma and TV.
No,
Wow.
We don't
TVs
have
are
any-
made
Sure.
from blood.
Yeah.
That's the secret that the big TV doesn't want you to know.
That's how they do it so cheaply. They just take
Uh-huh.
people's blood. So the topic of the day is glass?
Hope not.
It's gas, which is a state of matter. And I tried to explain using our traditional SciShow tangents balls in my poem what
Mhm.
gas is. but I'm sure that there are some edge cases that are going to mess this up. Ceri, what is gas?
I didn't want to think about the edge cases, but
Good
yes,
idea. Let's not do it.
There are the states of matter, like you said, solid, liquid, gas, plasma. You can get it. We can dip a little bit into plasma if you want, but basically, gas is generally neutrally charged particles that are far apart balls bouncing off of each other. They're so far apart that in most cases, we can't see them. They're all around us in the atmosphere, scattered about.
Yeah.
And when you see something, so like if you say you see steam or smoke or something, there are gases as part of that, but the steam, like the opaqueness, is condensed liquid water, very, very tiny droplets.
So when you see like
fog,
steam in the shower, you're not really seeing steam. That's little droplets. And there's
That's
like
liquid
humidity
water.
around. Like in a power plant where they're using steam, like actual water vapor, just like pure vaporized water to drive turbines, that is entirely invisible and you would only see it as heat. And it is so dangerous that it's like a concern that sometimes there can be a steam leak and you can't see it. And all it would do is just completely destroy your body.
Yeah. So gases are weird if you think about it, because I feel like a lot of people would say, oh, I've seen gas, I've seen steam.
There are some visible gases.
Yeah, there are like light yellow.
Yeah, like yellow, like a bromine gas is orange.
But for the most part, gases you sense with your other senses. So either the temperature of them, if it's exceptionally hot, you can smell some gases, but not others. So like mercaptan is a gas that gets added to a natural gas pipe because that methane is generally odorless, but then you can smell mercaptan. So you can't see it. You wouldn't be able to smell it, but we add a smelly gas so that you can whiff it. Yeah. But otherwise, gas is a pretty undetectable or hard to study thing, which is really interesting. Like we know so much about it now.
It was kind of a long time before we were like, I bet that stuff's the same stuff as the other stuff. That was a big insight for humans. It's weird to stick your hand out of a really fast car and be like, wow, gas can be pretty hard. Like a hurricane force wind. It's just gas.
Just gas hitting you.
It's just real fast gas.
Yeah, it's fast gas. And so then there's like more of it in a smaller place, kind of.
Yeah,
it's all hitting
pressure.
You.
Sure. You said it was a long time before we figured that out. What's a long time?
Yeah. So the origin of the word gas comes from the 1650s or so.
Oh, wow.
There's a Flemish chemist named Jean-Baptiste van Helmont.
Nice.
Who was an earlier
definitely
chemist
not a vampire. Don't worry.
Yeah.
He could have been a vampire hunter, okay?
One of the two.
And instead of studying blood, he was studying gas, and he was just like looking at chemical reactions that produce gas. He especially was perplexed by carbon dioxide because he couldn't get it to condense. And so he made up the word gas, probably from the Greek word chaos, meaning empty space.
Ooh.
Whoa, what?
Which is very cool. He's probably influenced by the 16th century physician and natural philosopher Paracelsus, who used chaos to denote like spirit things. Like, we just don't understand. There's spirits. And so this chemist was like, well, gas? I don't know.
Wow.
It's a mystery.
But he didn't really know what gas was. But that's like the origin of the thing.
Yeah. So he it was in a book that was published posthumously. And he said, this vapor, he wrote this in Latin, I think. But this vapor, hitherto unknown, I call by a new name, gas.
Nice.
Like, here's this weird thing. Here's this weird thing. I'm going to call it a gas.
It's wild that like we spent, hundreds of thousands of years existing in a soup of particles that we cannot live without. And we didn't think to give it a name until like 400 years ago.
So what did we think farts were? What did we think was going on there?
Yeah, I don't know. Bad air. I think that there was the word air. Like,
my guess would be that air, because air was, like Hank said, early medicine was like, bad air is bad for your soul or whatever. And we knew that you had to breathe and that we were breathing something, but air was probably separate from the state of matter that is gas, of like a chemical thing That is
That
gas.
yeah.
Okay.
Paracelsus, like anybody who's got a name like Paracelsus, where you're just like, I renamed myself a word. Those people are great. Like
Yes,
Carl
this is the first
Linnaeus.
I've ever heard of him.
He's just gonna like Carl. Yeah, he's just gonna be like, my name's Carl, but I'm gonna change my last name to Linnaeus because my whole thing is lineages.
Oh,
Like, wouldn't that be
wow.
fun? To
Yeah.
be like, I'm gonna be Hank Simon.
Hank YouTube. They'd sue your
Hank
ass, though.
Tube Boy. Hank Tube-
Mr. Tube Boy, thank you for joining us today.
Our keynote speaker today, Mr. Tube Boy.
It's Dr. Tube Boy. I changed it.
Sam, to answer your question about the word fart, it was apparently one of those imitative words. So it comes from
crap.
Old English Fjorton, Feortan, which I guess is what they thought fart sound. They were like, oh, you're making a Fjorton out of your butt. So it's a sound word rather than a gas word.
That
Great.
sounds about
I like
right.
that. Yeah.
The farts are they're kind of more about the sound than the smell. Like they're definitely of two parts.
Yeah.
But the sound is the
sound is
part
funny.
that is
The smell.
the
ain't
sound is
funny,
like
though.
fun.
Yeah.
So the smell can be pretty bad.
An expert opinion from Dr.
Tube
Video Boy.
So that means it's time to move on to the quiz portion of our show. This week, I've got a game. We're playing a game, and it's called Brainstorm. So
Wow,
Brainstorm
Oh.
is a pretty simple game. I'll ask you a question. I'll give you a number for how many possible answers there are to the question, and you'll have 2 minutes to guess out loud, trying to avoid interrupting each other if you can. You'll get a point for any answer you get correct, and there are no penalties for wrong answers. Round number 1, we're going to talk about helium. So helium is used for a bunch of stuff, more than just filling balloons, and it can be used to achieve cold temperatures for scientific applications. It can provide an unreactive environment for manufacturing certain technologies. Helium is great because, referring to the poem earlier, it's like the least sticky of the particles. So it stays a gas, and so until very, very low temperatures. To that end, because it is so useful, some countries have national reserves of helium extracted from natural gas. And the U.S. has one of the largest, with helium extracted from plants around the country. In 2022, the U.S. Geological Survey said that there were 15 plants across 7 states that extract helium from natural gas to produce crude helium. What are those 7 states? Bonus points if you can guess the state with the largest number of helium plants. Go!
Helium plants. I've never heard of one here, so I feel like there isn't one here. There's helium in Texas. They
That
got
is
everything
correct.
Out of the ground in Texas. Great.
Ooh. Nevada.
That is not correct.
Colorado.
That is correct.
What? Oklahoma.
Correct.
Ooh, it goes that way too, eh? What's the one that Bill Clinton used to be the governor of? Arkansas.
No.
Shoot.
Mississippi.
No.
Alabama?
No.
Kansas.
That's the one. That's the one with the most.
Map of U.S.
Oh, Jesus.
New Mexico.
Yes.
Oh, shoot. That was an obvious one, huh?
North Dakota.
No.
I think that's too far up for helium, in my opinion. Utah? Does Utah have helium?
Yes.
What about
There's only. Oh, it's all over,
oh.
everybody. You only missed one.
RIP?
You did a great
Arizona?
job. You really sort of centered in on the areas where helium comes from quite quickly. You missed Arizona, which is around those other states. All right, round number 2. This one's a little different. It's going to be a matching game. One application for noble gases is to make neon signs. You put a noble gas in a tube, apply an electric voltage, and watch the color that forms as atoms bump into each other and excite their electrons. So for the noble gases, neon, helium, krypton, and argon, which each produce the following 4 colors: green, blue, pink, and red. Go!
Oh, I used to know this. Argon is red. Is
Nope.
that right? Oh, no.
Helium's blue.
Helium's not blue.
Feels blue. Oh, okay.
Nope.
Neon is green.
Nope.
Oh, no. Neon is red.
Yes.
Is helium pink?
Yes.
Oh, krypton is green.
Krypton is green.
Makes sense, like Superman. What's left? Argon
is blue.
Oh, wow.
We
Ceri
tied.
cut in right before you.
Oh, come on. From my perspective, we tie.
So Ceri got 3 out of that one. Good job. That was great. That was fun. All right. That was not going to take 2 minutes. And round number 3, we're going to talk about lifting gases, which are gases that have a lower density than the air around them, which lets the gas rise. That property has been very useful in designing various aircrafts like balloons and blimps. The National Aviation Academy describes 6 lifting gases that have been used to fly aircraft. What are they? Go.
Helium. Is helium one of them?
Yes.
Hydrogen.
Yes.
Oh, God. I don't know any of this. And Ceri's going to know all of them.
Have we used water vapor?
No.
What's the stuff? Natural gas. What's that made out of?
Methane?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
methane?
Sam gets that.
I'll let
one.
you have that,
Yeah.
Sam. Nitrogen gas?
No.
There's so much of it.
I will give a
Uh,
hint that it doesn't necessarily have to be a pure gas.
Oh. Carbon dioxide or monoxide. One of those.
No.
Both.
What's the laughing gas mixture?
Ooh, nitrous oxide.
Good
Got it.
guess, but no.
Tough luck, Ceri.
Yeah. We wouldn't do anything dangerous, I hope, of like not chlorine gas. That
Could you
feels
use-
dumb.
Whether it's dangerous or not does not matter.
I don't think that matters.
But
Yeah.
chlorine is not
Yeah,
one of
that's
them.
true.
There is a
About, like-
dangerous gas or two on this list.
I'm running out of my gas knowledge. Ethylene?
Nope. You guys are going to kick yourselves
I don't know.
with one of these.
Mm.
Ding, ding, ding. Time is up. The one that you're going to kick yourselves about is hot air.
Oh, shit.
Oh no! You know the classic gas, air.
I told you it could be a mixture. The classic thing
Yeah.
that's inside of almost all current lifting
There's
craft.
Yeah, there's a whole
So-
balloon named after hot air. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wow.
But Ceri, let's see if we can do it this way. So a gas is going to be lighter if it's a gas that is a molecule, not an atom, but it has connected to it light atoms.
So hydrogen, but not a hydrocarbon.
That already makes you sound very smart.
Yeah.
Well, hydrogens they bond to anything. They're a little
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
they hang out. All kinds of things. They saturate. Nitrogen, ammonia.
That's it. There it is.
Wow.
Very, very good. Ammonia. And then the last one was you weren't going to get coal gas, which was used for a while, which has got, it's got hydrogen in it and a bunch of other stuff.
Mm.
You heat up coal and the gas that comes off is lighter than air. All right. I have no idea what that did for the scores, but hopefully Faith was paying attention. And Ceri is at 7 and Sam is at 6. Very close,
Oh,
you guys.
Ooh, neck and neck.
Not as dumb as I look, huh?
Next up, we're going to take a short break. And then it'll be time for the Fact Off. Welcome back, everybody. It's time for the Fact Off. Our panelists have brought science facts to present to me in an attempt to blow my mind. And after they've presented their facts, I will judge them and I will award Hank bucks any way I see fit. But to decide who goes first, I have a trivia question for you. Laughing gas, as we discussed earlier, is nitrous oxide, N2O, a colorless gas that was discovered by Joseph Priestley at the end of the 18th century. But its use as an anesthetic wasn't discovered until later, when an American dentist named Horace Wells attended a demonstration where a volunteer was given the gas only to injure his leg on some nearby benches without feeling any pain. When Wells realized that nitrous oxide seemed to have pain-killing properties, he decided to put it to the test while having his tooth extracted by another
Aw.
dentist.
Okay.
That's great. I love that. Try it
Yeah.
out. Also, I love, if you're gonna be on nitrous, I'm not surprised that you injured your leg walking
Yeah.
around at a science demonstration. But what year did Wells discover that laughing gas could be used as an anesthetic?
Could this be disturbingly late? Could this have been 1955 or something like that?
Could be.
Is that your guess?
That's my guess.
Okay.
I think it's earlier than that. I think it's
we just didn't know a lot about gas. 1880.
1844. Ceri coming out on top gets to decide who goes first.
Oh, I'll go first.
And I will listen with rapt attention as you attempt to blow my mind.
The substance that we call natural gas, as we've talked about, is mostly methane, which has the structure CH4 and other hydrocarbons, which are all molecules made of various carbons and hydrogens bonded together. It's one of those straightforward chemical names, which I'm grateful for as a science communicator. And natural gas is used as the fuel for lots of things, like heating or cooking, in part because it's very flammable. And a big part of why many people still use it is that a huge infrastructure of pipes and whatnot exists to carry the gas to homes or factories or whatnot.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And that got me thinking, it's not easy to capture and control and move around gas. The people who sell farts are probably lying because there is definitely not an airtight seal. So you are mostly paying for an expensive, weird jar of normal air. So basically, what I have brought for a fact off today is an abridged history of gas storage and transport, which I think is more exciting than it sounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Hank Hill's freaking out there, you know?
So a lot of gases today are stored in various, often metal, often cylindrical containers. I'm oversimplifying a lot. Where the gas is squeezed in at a pressure way higher than the standard atmospheric pressure. This saves space, helps with transportation, and is a consequence of having the knowledge and technology to heat and cool and separate lots of different gases and then cram them into these containers.
Yep.
Before, gas cylinders were the vaguely named gas holders, which were mostly large chambers like the size of a farm silo where natural gas or coal gas, which we talked about, which is made when coal is heated in a vacuum, were stored at atmospheric pressure. We didn't figure out squeezing until the 1900s, really.
It's tricky.
And from my understanding, there were a lot of these gas holders in Europe and or wherever chemists were. Around the 1800s, when Lavoisier was alive, he developed a desktop device called a gasometer.
Yeah. That's
French.
great French. Never try. That's what I do with French.
I can do Spanish, not French.
Mm-hmm.
He made this gasometer out of glass and some metal bits so that he could produce and weigh gases. And slightly before that, my boy, Jean-Baptiste van Helmont, from the etymology section, was just experimenting with gases like carbon dioxide in closed vessels, but not necessarily transporting them around. And what I am most excited to share, but I felt like I needed more scientific and historical context to make it a fact off, is before that, in China, somewhere in the 900 to 200 BCE years, people were drilling for both brine, because salt is useful, and natural gas, because fuel is useful. And as far as I can tell from secondary sources, the main way that natural gas was drilled for, stored, and transported was through bamboo stalks, which I guess makes sense. You punch a hole in the earth and then seal up and use that same hollow tube to collect gas and prevent it from mixing with the atmosphere. And then you move it around as best you can to where you need fuel for fire. And then you light it on fire, etc. Before that, all I could find was anecdotal accounts of people finding natural gas reserves because they were set on fire by lightning or some other environmental phenomenon, but not harnessing the gas in any way because it's invisible and hard to fathom, much less control and capture. So all that to say, I'm sure there's more history of gaseous fuel, but it's not readily Googleable, so you'll have to just send it to us or go on an adventure yourself.
Do we know what exactly they were doing with the bamboo? It was just what were they powering?
I think using it as fire to boil water to extract the salt from the brine, or mainly for heat, I think. Heat or cooking. So similar things that we use natural gas for today, except instead of a infrastructural system, they just were I punched a hole in the ground and have some gas in a tree that I chopped down, and I'm going to bring it wherever I need it.
Would you fill up a wagon with bamboo full of gas?
A lot of people described it as using bamboo pipes, but that doesn't make sense to me as forming a seal, or there's nothing to put pressure on. So I think, yes, my impression of it is that you would use it as what later was a gas holder, like a vessel or a gas cylinder, and stop it up some way and then load it onto a cart and then bring it wherever you needed it and then somehow tap into it and let the gas out.
They had their own little Hank Hill back then. Selling
Yeah.
propane and propane accessories.
Bringing his wagon around. Here you go.
So
Here's your bamboo.
Sam, so Sam, what do you got?
Mining is dangerous, and coal mining is even more dangerous because coal and the gases that seep out of it are poisonous and explosive. And throughout history, sometimes coal mines would explode or coal miners would drop dead for kind of mysterious reasons. So in the 1890s, a scientist named John Scott Haldane set out to investigate what undetectable thing was killing miners and causing explosions. And he quickly discovered the culprit to be carbon monoxide. But just knowing what was causing these accidents wasn't enough because, unfortunately, in addition to being toxic and flammable, carbon monoxide is odorless, so you pretty much can't notice it before it is too late. So Haldane started experimenting on himself, hoping to find ways to detect carbon monoxide before it made him pass out and die. And experimenting on himself was something that Haldane was famous for. Like in World War I, he designed the first gas mask while experimenting on himself with gases used in gas warfare. And he pioneered a lot of research into what happens when your body gets too high and too low, like the pressure is too high and too low. The dude just loved breathing weird stuff and breathing in weird ways. But anyway, I guess in this case, Haldane couldn't figure out how to detect carbon monoxide before he passed out. So he started experimenting on small animals. And eventually he found that canaries were 20 times more sensitive to carbon monoxide than people. So they would pass out in places with low enough carbon monoxide concentration to warn miners that things were getting dangerous so the miners could get out of there. So based on his findings, miners all over the world started carrying their own personal canaries in cages down into mines with them as like an advanced warning device. And you might think, as I did, mostly because of cartoons, that this was sort of a cruel practice because the canary would drop dead. But John Scott Haldane was, it seems, sort of a bleeding heart when it came to animals. So he tested on them, but he allegedly didn't like to do anything to them that he wouldn't do to himself. And so as part of his canary coal mine discovery, he also invented a sort of comedically complicated device that you could use to revive passed out canaries. So the contraption was like a steel and glass box with a grate on one side and a little oxygen tank on top. So once your canary friend started to show signs of carbon monoxide poisoning, like it stops singing or it just like falls off its perch, you could swing the little door closed and like seal it up and turn the oxygen tank on and bring your little guy back to life. So you can feel sorry for canaries and invent cages to keep them from dying all you want, but that doesn't mean that miners or mining companies will actually use them. And for that matter, a lot of images of canaries in coal mines do show them like in normal cages. But there are also photo evidence of miners actually using these resuscitating cages. And that might seem like a lot of trouble to go through for just a little bird. But there are also accounts of miners being like super into and loving their little canary friends. So I guess it does kind of make sense that you wouldn't want them to die. Canaries were used in coal mines until 1986 when a portable poison gas detector was introduced to mines, which I thought was just crazy that it took so long to get anything besides a bird.
I mean, I guess I knew that it wasn't just a saying, but I didn't realize how institutionalized and like widespread the practice was.
I knew they used them because I come from Butte where a lot of mining happened, but I thought for sure they just croaked and the miners were like, whatever. But
everybody go, leave the bird.
Yeah.
The bird's like, leave without me. But yes, it's a little bird in a little cage. Now I want to know all about this person and his relationship with this canary.
Yeah, would they bring him home,
cute.
or was there like a canary keeper at the mine? So many questions.
I bet they brought
that
him
would be a
home.
cool job.
Like a little intern at the mine. Get to be a canary keeper.
Yeah.
All right. So you were really close coming into this, and both of those facts were very good. But for pure ability to make a great TikTok out of it, Sam's going to be the winner of this episode. Congratulations, Sam.
Thank you. I humbly accept.
Glad. That would be really weird if you didn't. So now it's time to ask the Science Couch, where we got a question for our couch of finely honed scientific minds.
Napoleon on Discord asks, what makes farts so loud? Great question. An all-time question.
An all-time question.
A real everyman kind of question.
I feel like I'm not sure. Things that make sounds loud are usually some kind of resonance where, like our face is full of resonance chambers so we can make louder and richer sounds. And, your guitar's got a big resonance chamber in it. Butts don't have a resonance chamber. So that can't be that.
Is it vibrating butt cheeks?
Yeah, I wonder to what extent, like, I feel like there's two potential fart noises. There's like a noise of the actual cheeks. And that makes, so like what's happening in that situation is a pressure builds up until the cheeks separate, and then the pressure is released and there's no pressure anymore. So they slap back together.
Yeah.
And that happens over and over again because the pressure continues to rebuild every time the cheeks slap back together. But I think that also happens with the anus itself, where the anus kind of can do some slapping. And so I wonder, I don't know if there's like two different fart noises, like in two different mechanisms, or if they sort of like happen together somehow. Because it seems like the kind of thing that I would have thought about before, but I don't feel like I put a lot of mental energy behind it. Ceri nodded during that, which makes me feel good.
Yeah,
as if I was getting something right.
So the butt cheeks one, the jury is out. I think
jury
most people
is
say
out?
no. I think most people say no, butt cheeks don't
There's no
vibrate
butt cheek
fast enough
involved.
to like this motion that you're going to. Your butt cheek, the way that gas comes out, it's not going to go more than a little bit. In a cartoon, the butt cheeks are vibrating all over the place because that's how they show the fart. But in real life, the gas comes out fast enough that the noise isn't coming from the butt cheeks.
This is shocking.
Together.
I can't believe it.
You heard it here first.
Sam's whole vision of the world is changing right now.
Yeah.
So
But
it's just anus.
It's all anus, as far as we can tell. Where kind of like how like trumpet players use their mouth or as like
It's
make
like
the
that.
buzzing noise, make the vibrations. Your anal sphincter does that little vibration, and that noise is affected by the velocity of the gas as you push it out, the volume of gas, and then your natural personal shape
Everybody's
and size.
got a different
of your
fart
anal sphincter.
voice, huh?
Everyone, yeah.
It's got
Much
a
like
different
everyone's
anus.
got a little different hole on the face, people have got a different hole on the butt, and that changes your like resting tone of fart. And like so, you can manipulate the sounds of farts by like tightening or releasing. So as you anyone has tried to hold in a fart or release it gradually over time, and that can change the volume and pitch of a fart because it changes the way that muscle vibrates.
And I don't know if you're trying to have a fart not make noise, what you want is for the pressure to be enough to overcome the tightness of the sphincter and enough to keep it open and not to have the thing happen where it's opening, like the pressure opens it and then the release of pressure closes it again so that the pressure builds up again. So and that's a function both of like the pressure and of the looseness or tightness of the sphincter. And so those of us who can do a good job, and I do think that like what it makes it seem like it's the butt cheeks is that if you lean off of the thing, you can make it so that the fart noise. But I think that that's actually loosening not the butt cheeks, but it's loosening the sphincter. Because when you're sitting on your butt, you're putting pressure on that muscle.
I feel like I'm in college right now. That was a very important one I just learned.
Well, yeah, and like you also have to consider all of what I read is specifically about the sphincter and its vibrations. Like more air coming out at once tend to be louder, less air coming out, like seeping out, tend to be not from swallowed air, but from intestinally generated air. So those are like the silent but deadly farts. They're stinkier, but like louder ones are like you swallow a lot of air, you drink a soda.
Just drank a Coke,
So silent but deadly is scientifically accurate. Is that what basically you're saying? Wow.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, there's like your pants to think about, other layers that create that
there's
pressure
always your
for the
pants.
sound.
You got to think about your pants. Please don't forget them.
The squeaky chair beneath you that may or may not be causing the fart, or if it's just a plasticky chair, Is it echoing up? I don't know. Farts
or
are
does the chair
vibrations.
become like a resonance chamber? And I wonder if like the colon, like a colon full of gas is its own resonance chamber where that's amplifying some of the sound.
That I'm not sure of,
Who
but
knows?
there's most of that study of like echoing farts comes along with some sort of loss of bowel control where like you can't hold in a fart because you can't control the sphincter. And so that usually is like both fart and stool and all kinds of gastro related issues. And so at that point, if you can't hold in a fart and the air is just coming out, then probably the colon's going to echo it some more too, because it's just like, it's all coming out.
I know that there are some younger listeners to SciShow Tangents, and to them I want to say, I hope this has been a lot of fun. That your parents are just really working through it right now. And also, I hope that you just learned the word stool and that Ceri worked really hard to not say the word shart.
Yeah.
If you want to ask the Science Couch your question, you can follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents, where we'll tweet out topics for upcoming episodes every week, or you can join the SciShow Tangents Patreon and ask us on Discord. Thank you to @Yaidi and @Liz Does Museums and everybody else who asked us your questions for this episode. If you like this show and you want to help us out, very easy to do that. First, you can go to patreon.com/SciShow Tangents. You can become a patron. You get access to things like our newsletter and our bonus episodes. Special thanks to patrons John Pollock and Les Aker. Second, you can leave us a review wherever you listen. That's super helpful, and it helps us know what you like about the show. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, just tell people about us. Because how else are they going to find out how farts truly work? Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Ceri Riley.
And I've been Sam Schultz.
SciShow Tangents is created by all of us and produced by Sam Schultz. Our editor is Seth Glickspin. Our story editor is Alex Billow. Our social media organizer is Julia Buzz Pizzaio. Our editorial assistant is Debunked Chakravarti. Our sound design is by Joseph Tuna Medish. Our executive producers are Caitlin Hoffmeister and me, Hank Green. And of course, we couldn't make any of this without our patrons on Patreon. Thank you, and remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted.
But one more thing. Animals make all kinds of noises when they're surprised. And we know of two species of snakes, the Sonoran coral snake and the Western hook-nosed snake, that use a technique called cloacal popping, which is basically farting that's supposed to be scary. The cloaca is a multi-purpose hole that...
Unlike our farts that just are scary. That's not the intent.
Terrifying. Yeah.
They can be.
The cloaca is a multi-purpose hole that deals with waste and reproduction, so there's some muscle control involved. To make these low, frequent popping noises, these snakes rhythmically contract and release their cloacal sphincter muscles to compress the gas inside them and squeeze it out in sudden bursts, just like a fart we were talking about. And if there's other waste up in there, it might fling out with the expelled gas too.
Why
Undignified.
Look,
But scary?
There's no dignity in life and death.
You're already a snake. You're scary. You don't have to shit and fart.
Pop, pop.
Pop, pop. Welcome to SciShow Tangents, the lightly competitive science knowledge showcase. I'm your host, Hank Green, and joining me this week, as always, is science expert Ceri Riley.
Hello.
And our resident everyman, Sam Schultz.
Hello.
Should I pay for a blue check mark?
Absolutely
on
not.
Twitter?
No, everyone hates them.
Well, that's good then, because I got one for free for some reason. And then I turned it off by changing my name, but then I kept all of the fun features. Like I get to post really long posts. I get to edit my posts.
The show's going to be such a great record of what's happening with Twitter.
The whole sort of the things that went down.
There's so few people in your position who can experience it from the place that you're experiencing it from, you know?
Yeah. Well, what I didn't like is that when you click the little blue check mark, it said that I had
Yeah,
done
that's
a
not
thing
good.
that I hadn't done.
That's not good.
And so I privated my account, and this is the real story, you guys. It's amazing.
Oh.
Twitter is so great when it's just the people
You and
Who
4 million of
already-
your closest friends.
who already like me. That's the way to do it. It's not like a drama-free zone by any stretch of the imagination. But I had in the previous week gotten a tweet sucked into the sort of right wingosphere, and that always is really uncomfy. And
Yeah.
now that doesn't happen because I'm private. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can't.
Tough luck. Write them a
Yeah.
letter. Request it. It's tough out here out in the mud on the other side of the fence. We're just
Yeah.
slugging it out.
Well, you could go private.
That would be bad for us. I wouldn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
see
if
the
I say,
drawbacks, yeah.
oh, you should listen to SciShow Tangents? People wouldn't see that.
Right.
People need to see that.
People need to see that. That's what it's for.
Mhm.
You're the SciShow Tangent's #1 fan, Sam Schultz.
Yeah.
I should say that I did a trivia night the other day for Project for Awesome, and one of the categories was things you might have learned on tangents. And there was a person who got every single question correct,
Wow.
Incredible.
who had listened to every episode of SciShow Tangents multiple times.
Ooh.
Wow.
And
They're learning.
it was a total joy. And I was like, there's stuff in that list that I didn't remember. Every week here on SciShow Tangents, we get together to try to one-up, amaze, and delight each other with science facts while also trying to stay on topic. Our panelists are playing for glory and for Hank Bucks, which I will be awarding as we play. And at the end of the episode, one of them will be crowned the winner. Now, as always, we're going to introduce this week's topic with the traditional science poem. This week is from me. Outside is great. I love it. It's bay. But sometimes you want to keep outside away. And that's what the inside is for. It's so good, surrounded by concrete or metal or wood. It keeps out the cold or the damp or the heat. It keeps out the things that have too many feet. But there's one part of out that we often want in. And when we can do it, it's such a huge win. When we're sleeping, we do want to keep out the night. But when we're waking, you have to let in that light. So melt down some sand and some soda and lime and lay it out flat and then wait for a time and then take out that stuff and put it in your wall and be careful not to hit it with a ball. Because inside is great, but it's best of all when it lets in the things that we want to get in.
Beautiful.
The topic for the day is glass.
Have you ever thrown something through glass that you weren't supposed to?
Oh, yeah. It was a baseball and it went through my garage door glass.
Classic.
My garage does not have glass windows in it, but in Florida, every garage had like a row of glass windows,
Yeah.
which seems so dumb.
Yeah. You see right in.
It seems more expensive and worse.
Yeah.
But I guess it's so that you can see when you got,
If there's
But
an
you don't like-
alligator in there before you open it. Maybe.
That's
gotta check and
it.
see.
Yeah, or
Do an
outside
alligator check.
before you're ready to go out.
Oh, yeah.
You can peep.
There could be an alligator out there.
What are other Florida dangers? You could just avoid your
Yeah.
neighbors too before
Yeah.
opening your garage door. That would be my main use, I think, is to be like, oh,
Right. Like, is I out there?
is anyone? I'm not ready to chat
Mhm.
right now. So
So, Ceri, what's glass?
glass puzzles a lot of people. I don't know if you get a lot of glass questions on TikTok.
I get some glass questions. I feel like the confusing things about glass are mostly things that were made up.
Yeah, there's a lot of lies
Yeah.
about glass
True.
out there. So glass is a non-crystalline, which means
Mhm.
that it doesn't have a regular structure. So another way of describing that is an amorphous solid. Most of the glass that is around us, the main component is silicon dioxide, which is we can take from sand. It's quartz, melted down and then reformed into a shape that we want it. There are other types of glass besides silica glass. For example, CDs or DVDs, that really thin layer of glass on there is also like an amorphous solid substance. It's chalcogenide glass, which is anything in group 16 of the periodic table.
Oh.
I just figured it was plastic.
Yeah, there's a layer of glass over the side with the movie on it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And so there are other glasses besides silica glasses out there.
Is like cell phone glass silica glass? Like obviously they've done something to this glass to make it
stronger
Yeah.
over the years.
I think it is. I think it's silica glass. And silica glass can be treated in a lot of different ways as well.
Yeah.
So to make it stronger, it can be tempered, which is like heat treated. There can be additives to it. So in the case of the glass on our phone, I don't know if there's any additives to like make it more conductive or help with the thinness of it. I didn't look up cell phone glass. But by and large, the thing that we know how to shape and to make, and the reason why we have sand shortages is the fact that silica glass is everywhere. And I think the reason why people get confused is because they think amorphous solid, and they cling on to the word amorphous naturally.
Right.
Because some ways that chemists describe amorphous things is that it acts like a liquid. Like a liquid is an amorphous substance.
Right.
Which is all the atoms and molecules don't really have kind of an order. They kind of slosh around. And there is like a liquid phase of glassy materials, which is if you watch any glass blowing shows where it's kind of like gooping around. But after you quench it, when you cool it down to a point where it's solid, the atoms and molecules are locked into place.
They're just all over the place. What?
Yeah, they're just all over the place. And so there's this idea that, and I think floating around in science communication spaces, that glass is like a liquid. And so then people think that if there's so much heat on windows, then it will gradually flow. But it is a solid, and that flowing only happens over the course of like ridiculously long time scales. And one piece of evidence that people bring up for this is that if you look at stained glass windows in like medieval times, 13th century, then sometimes glass window panes are thinner at the top and thicker at the bottom because, and they're like, sun has been shining on this window, and it has been the liquid nature of the glass has been making it thicker at the bottom. But that is just because of how that glass was made. We didn't have a really good way of making this big, even panes of windows that we make nowadays. And they had to like basically make a big circle of glass and then cut out rectangles from it. And so there are naturally thicker and thinner spots, and it just makes sense to put the thicker spot at the bottom because then it's more sturdy.
Stable.
Yeah.
So, but is there a time scale on which like glass would flow?
It would take billions of years to cause nano-size alterations to the shape of the glass.
So it's not that it doesn't flow.
That's
it's
crazy.
not that it doesn't flow. But for us to notice it
That's
in
awesome.
our puny human lifetimes,
Billions of
Not
years,
close.
for clarity, the whole time life has been around on Earth.
yeah,
A substantial portion of the life of the universe is what we're talking about here.
And that's just for tiny changes? Is that what you
For
said?
nanoscale
Just like-
changes.
yeah, for nanoscale
Yeah.
changes,
Okay.
not even like macroscopic.
Boom.
Definitely not windows melting.
Yeah, I feel
Right.
like we have done the work of SciShow tangents.
Yeah.
We've been like, this thing that you heard about this thing, it's true, but only in the most tiny possible way you could possibly imagine.
It makes sense that people would think it's true, though, because what Ceri said sounds more fake than that the glass is thicker at the bottom because it flowed down.
And also, like, you look at old windows sometimes and they're like flowy. They look like
Yeah.
wavy and weird, and new ones don't. So I guess it's because they've had time to get wavy. But no,
Yep.
they were always wavy.
And you see so much, like the main times people see glass manufacturing is, I feel like, glass blowing.
Yeah.
Especially
And
with Netflix and glass blowing TV shows. And so
Yeah.
they're like, that's goopy.
it is
Of
goofy.
course, it must like revert back to the goop.
Mhm.
But we don't think about the big industrial processes that make the panes of glass that we use in windows or
You're right.
atriums.
This is the first time I've thought about that right now.
And it's very different. It's like, we'll talk about it later a little bit
Okay.
as part of the viewer question. I researched
great.
it, but it
That's-
is like fascinating. And I didn't think about it before now either, because you think glass is goop and then it's not goop.
Well, a little bit of foreshadowing for later in the show. But Ceri, do you know where the word glass comes from?
So we're getting to the point in the show where I know just enough etymology to do this segment, but not enough etymology to separate the words that we've already talked about.
Right.
So glass comes from the same root word as glow, which is kind of like the Proto-Indo-European root gel, Ghel,
which means to shine.
Interesting.
So glass, instead of being described as a material, glass was described by its property. It was like, oh, that's a shiny thing. And that's probably because natural glasses, like volcanic glasses that appeared, which was like volcanic glass obsidian, or desert glasses in Mesopotamia or like North Syria, Egypt area that were formed by asteroids impacting the sand and like heating them up really hot, were just shiny. And so people were like, the shiny thing, it's glassy.
How long have we been doing glass for?
That's a good question. At least since like the turn of the before common era.
The history of glassmaking dates back to at least 3,600 years ago to Mesopotamia. I just knew that off the top of my head. Wow.
That sounds like the way you talk.
I remember.
All right. I feel well informed on glass, and that means it's time to move on to the quiz portion of our show. This week, we're going to play a little game called Primary Source. Sometimes the most fun thing that you can do with science is learn about how people used to talk about it. And luckily, thanks to the work of archivists and librarians and a lot of other people, it is easier than ever to find examples of texts in their original form so we can experience science in these other words. So today, in honors of the wonders of the internet, we're trying a new game. It's called Primary Source. And I'm going to be reading to you a quote that comes from some kind of article or advertisement whose subject is related to glass. And I'll give you 3 options for what that subject is, and you get to guess. Does that make sense?
We already know about this game to book. You already cleared it with us.
Great. Round number 1. In 1883, the electrical power trade journal called The Electrical World included a segment originally written by the London correspondent of the Philadelphia Telegraph. The correspondent had written of a growing trend powered by electricity and included the following line: "Any color can be got out of glass, and for a tiny peep of light, the smallest battery is necessary." What was the trend they were talking about? Christmas lights, electric jewelry, or flashing stained glass windows?
Oh, electric jewelry. That one makes sense because of the tiny battery thing. What year was it?
It was the year 1883.
Were the rich people fancy enough to have electric jewelry?
That does seem a little bit early to me to do anything except like have it in your house, I guess.
I don't know. Rich people are gonna rich though.
It's true.
They're gonna fight over blue check marks. They're certainly gonna fight over. You have a lamp in your house. I have one around my neck, and it's not gonna be small and dainty. It's gonna be like a big chunker of like a full light bulb.
The tiniest of batteries.
Yeah.
Gosh, Christmas lights just feels like tailor-made to trick me, so I'm not going to guess that one.
Okay.
And the stained glass window thing.
I think it might be the stained glass window thing.
I feel like that doesn't like support what is said in the article. But he's a newspaper man. He could be, overblowing it.
I feel like if I was that time in England, knowing nothing about the socio-historical context, but just making vast assumptions.
And you're from Philadelphia.
Yeah. And the church would be like, oh, how can we make our windows look a little, like people are over stained glass windows. How can we make them a little more fancy?
Okay.
A little light there.
And then this rube walks by and goes, golly.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I think it's the jewelry. I'm going with that one. That's what my heart's telling me.
I think it's the stained glass.
Well, in the 18th and 19th century, electricity inspired a lot of inventions, including a trend in fashion. For example, electric jewelry. On stage, you could find electric headgear illuminating the performers, and eventually that trend spread to wealthy women in their fancy dresses. The article was published by The Electrical World, which was a thing. And the writer says that in the place of diamonds or rubies, the correct thing now, this is a quote, is to wear a star or brooch illuminated by electricity upon the left shoulder instead of the diadems at first worn at fancy balls. That's all possible thanks to the batteries, which a dressmaker told the writer could be expected to make ladies' dresses increase in size so that there would be space to secure the battery.
Left shoulder is very specific. If your right shoulder, that's for your little parrot friend.
Gosh.
I was definitely picturing like a little necklace with a little battery inside of it. Mm-hmm. But no, you got to have a whole thing. You need a special dress to hold it. Round number 2. In 1845, the British medical journal, The Lancet, featured an article containing the following quote. Artificial is but a very bad substitute for natural light. Plants reared in a strong artificial light will become green and grow, but the green is of a pale yellowish hue, and they are sickly looking and diseased. What was this article about? Was it instructions on molding glass for greenhouses, a treatise against the use of glass bulbs, or an argument against a tax on glass?
Oh, interesting. Greenhouses make sense because they're like, can't just put a light bulb in a greenhouse. You got to have a window, big window.
What was the middle one? Sorry, I missed it.
The middle one was a treatise against the use of glass bulbs.
Are they like, it's bad for plants and so it's bad for humans? I feel like that's the argument here. If this was part of that treatise, it'd be, man, like plants, they're sickly. Humans would also be sickly.
Was the last one a tax on glass on windows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe that could be like, we need windows because our plants need them. Please stop attacking them. But I think you're right, Ceri. I think I'm just going to go with what you said.
Oh, I think it's the window tax.
Oh, I thought you said a tax on windows. Like, hiya. You meant taxing windows.
Just a
I
bunch
thought people
of
were
kids
going
throwing
around.
baseballs at
That's
windows.
hilarious.
Attacking
A
windows.
tax on windows.
A tax on windows. Well, I stand by my logic, but I also stand by my answer.
Well, it is indeed true that there have been a number of window taxes. The first began in England in 1696. There was ideally this was going to be a progressive tax. So if you had a bigger house, then you would pay more tax, and it would only be charged if you had more than 10 windows. And you wouldn't have 10 windows unless you had a really big house.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's only a tax on rich people. It turned out, actually, a lot of people who are in the working class live in buildings with more than 10 windows because they live in apartment buildings. And so those big tenement buildings had to pay higher taxes. So they just started to board up the windows. The landlords would board up the windows in their tenement houses so they didn't have to pay the tax. In addition to the window tax, the government later added a huge tax on glass in general, which amounted to 300% of its value. And the cumulative effect of these taxes was that people were living in homes without windows, which took a toll on public health. That doctors took note of. And in 1845, the Lancet article was written to celebrate the end of that tax on glass. The window tax took a few years after that to repeal. In 1850, a motion to repeal the tax failed by 3 votes, but it was finally repealed the next year.
Was that just like, the only way we can figure out how to tax rich people is counting windows? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and what, 10? They were like, 10. That's a
10.
lot of windows.
Anything more than 10. Yeah. Well, and I have more than 10 windows for sure. But
La-dee-da.
I have 5. So
you got 5. See?
I have 7 actually. They're small.
Well, but you live in an apartment building, so
I live in an apartment. So
you're
mine
screwed.
would be boarded up. Yeah, my landlord would absolutely board it up and be like, "No light for you."
Mm-hmm. All right, round number 3. H.A. Ward's Natural Science Establishment was a company based out of Rochester, New York. The company is now known as Ward's Science, and it has a long history of selling various scientific materials. In 1878, H.A. Ward's Natural Science Establishment published a catalog full of detailed glass creations made by a man named Leopold Blaschka, who included the following caveat in the catalog. In the giving of orders, I must beg for as lengthened a time of a delivery as possible, as I make the models with the help of son Rudolf Blaschka alone, it being impossible to employ any other assistant in the manufacturing of them. The prices are, comparatively speaking, so moderate that I cannot possibly allow any discount. The orders are not sent, transport paid, packing, etc., done cheaply. What were Blaschka's glass creations? Were they microscopy slides with maps etched into them, sculptures of invertebrate animals, or snow globes of famous scientists at work?
This is not the guy who makes the guy and his son was making those sculptures, right?
I don't know what you're talking about. I forgot about that.
Okay.
Is that this
Do I want to
episode?
sabotage you or not? I know the answer to this.
Gosh.
But
Oh, you do?
I love these guys.
I think that since you said you love them, I think it's the sculptures. Because I was a guy in the sun making glass. I couldn't possibly have happened any other time, right? But are you sabotaging me? I don't know.
I don't know. Why am I sabotaging? Should I just guess? He does very, very beautiful glass sculptures. He's the one who his exhibit is at the Harvard Natural History Museum, which if I can ever drag any of you to Boston, I will absolutely drag you to this museum. It is my favorite museum in the world because they do a bunch of like plant glass models and then also invertebrates. And it was very cool because they like you can't really preserve the shape of a jellyfish or a sea cucumber. You can put them in formaldehyde, but they lose some of the structural components.
Right.
But his art is so accurate, like pollen grains at 200 times their size, so that scientists have a 3D reference instead of a 2D drawing.
Okay, well, I guess that's my turn to guess. I guess that one.
I think you both got it right. Ceri not playing the cards close to the chest there.
She got way too excited.
You started getting mad at me. I wasn't being that devious.
So yeah, for prices between 50 cents and $6.50, which if you had done that, you would have made some good decisions in your life. You could purchase a beautiful glass model of an invertebrate created by Leopold and Rudolf Blaschke. So yeah, they are beautiful and they are on display and you can go and see them, and we should go and see them. They are incredibly detailed, and they would often even add an egg wash to mute the sheen on the sculpture so it would look more like what the animal would look like in the water.
How are they looking at him?
Wild.
What did they do?
Yeah, I guess they went into the water and looked at them.
Yeah, they got into boats. I think they did fishing boats. And so people would ship them fresh specimens.
This is so like an Etsy page, though. Like it's like you can really tell that like one guy complained about something and he was like, I'll next publication you have to include this paragraph. And it's just like, no, sometimes customers are just angry and you just have to say no.
No matter how hard your son works.
Yeah, just put him on the customer support part of it. That's the real solution to the problem. All right, you came out of that tied. Mostly because Ceri gave it away. Next up, we're going to take a short break and then the fact off. Now, get ready for the fact off. Our panelists have brought science facts to present in an attempt to blow my mind. And after they have presented the facts, I will judge them and award Hank Bucks any way I see fit. And to decide who goes first, I have a trivia question. Fulgurites are glassy tubes or crusts that are formed when lightning strikes sand, melting the sand and cooling it to form the tube. They're found throughout the world, but they're also rare and sometimes difficult to dig up because they are so fragile. In 1997, researchers at the University of Florida were at Camp Landing to study lightning when the ground was struck by a bolt. So they went out to excavate the fulgurite. To make sure they didn't break it, they had to use a lot of care and a lot of special tools, and they were able to unearth a fulgurite with 2 branches. How long do you think the longest branch was?
I don't know how far down the dirt goes.
That's a good thing to base it on, though.
Yeah.
6 feet. 6 feet under.
Oh,
6
that's
feet
what I
under.
was going to guess. 8 feet?
The answer is 17 feet.
Wow.
That's deep sand.
Now, the shorter branch was 16 feet. So, Ceri gets to go first.
As we learned in Hank's poem, most of the glass around us, from mixing bowls to windows, is soda lime glass, which, if you know chemistry speak, tells us what it's made of right in the name. Soda is sodium oxide, lime is calcium oxide, and the glass, in this case, is silicon dioxide. And a relatively pure mixture of these compounds will give you see-through glass so that you can see what's outside without letting it in. So even if light gets bounced around a bit as it switches from traveling through air to traveling through glass, the atoms inside aren't absorbing and emitting any particular wavelengths of visible light. So to make colored glass, you need to add some extra compounds to it, usually some sort of colored particle or metal oxide that can be distributed throughout the structure of the glass or coated on top. And one of the coolest kinds of colored glass, in my opinion, is dichroic glass. Depending on the angle that light hits the glass object and then enters your eyeball, you'll see different colors because optics are super weird. And nowadays, most research into dichroic glass has to do with precise filtering for microscopy or spectroscopy sensors, or even things like 3D glasses. But it can and has been used for artistic purposes too, even as far back as the 4th century in Rome that we know of. And one of the most famous examples of dichroic Roman glass is a well-preserved carved cup that depicts a scene from Homer's Iliad involving King Lycurgus. If light is shined directly onto the glass cup, so it reflects off the glass and into your eyes, the glass looks pale green. But if light is shined through the glass, the cup looks reddish pink. And it is like very wild how different it looks. And in studies of samples of the glass starting in the 1950s, scientists have learned that there's gold and silver distributed throughout the glass as tiny alloys and as pure nanoparticles. And from what we can deduce, it probably wasn't just by accident in the forge. This was an intentional mixing of these metals to make these colors. There's some evidence that glassmakers knew that adding gold particles could make glass red. That's like cranberry glass nowadays even. They mix in something else, but historically, if you mix in gold nanoparticles or very small chunks, turns it red. So this might be further experimentation that took the color to a whole new level. In the 1960s, researchers even worked with a company called Corning Glassworks to try and replicate this specific dichroic effect, knowing what we know now about optics and nanoparticles, and they couldn't get it exactly the same, which I think is really interesting. So it does seem like dichroism, at least when mixing metals and glass as opposed to careful coatings, is more art than science, and we have a lot to learn if we want to learn how to control optics in that very, very precise way.
So this is like nothing to do with the coating on the glass, which we see a bunch. It's like you could have a glass that's shiny and then you shine glass through it and you can't see the reflection anymore. But this is like the glass looks a color differently.
Yeah. And like there are some inconsistencies within it. They didn't want to shatter the cup, obviously, because they're like, this is this very rare artifact, but found fragments of the base like tucked inside. And so they've like analyzed those fragments, and they're like, even across these fragments, there's different concentrations of silver and gold nanoparticles, so it looks slightly different. But that same overall effect of like green versus red light.
How do you make a nanoparticle when you're an ancient person? Just a mortar and pestle?
I think so. I think you just grind it.
Zeus comes and helps you out. That's how they did it. Okay.
Yeah, Hephaestus or whatever his name is like
Vulcan hit it with his hammer. Is like,
it's just his dandruff. It just goes like that.
Yeah.
It's all ruined for us now because we invented these shampoos.
Yeah, our hair care got better and our glass got less cool.
Who sacrificed a bottle of Seltz Blue to Zeus? Thanks a lot.
Yeah. All right, Sam, what do you got?
Okay, this is about something that's been big news, and I'm sure it probably won't blow Hank's mind because he's probably read all kinds of articles about it, but it blew my mind, and it's about glass. So let's talk about them glass beads up on the moon that they found.
Oh,
so people, for some reason, really want to live on the moon, and part of living anywhere is being able to drink water. So a big part of moon research is trying to identify potential sources of water. And lots of experiments have shown that there is water in some form present on a lot of the surface of the moon, from the shadows of craters to the poles. And the fact that water seems to like collect on the poles of the moon even suggests that the moon might have like a water cycle of some sort. But you've seen the moon. There aren't lakes, there aren't rivers, there aren't even any damn puddles on the moon. So scientists want to know, where is this water and how is it traveling around the moon's surface? When China's Chang'e 5 probe returned to Earth from the moon in 2020, it brought with it soil samples from the moon. A lot of it was what you'd expect, moon dirt. But in that moon dirt, there are lots of these little glass beads in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and colors, which are formed when lunar soil is hit by meteors, which happens all the time. The fact that there were glass beads all over the moon wasn't surprising, because the same thing happens on Earth when it gets hit by meteors. Sand and minerals fuse together into all kinds of glassy blobs called tektites, but the surprising part is yet to come. So by 2022, seemingly everything that Chang'e had brought back from the moon had been looked at carefully, except for some reason, these little glass beads. So eventually, a team of scientists took a peek at the beads, and what they found was evidence that they contained water. So meteors can have ice on them, but the scientists don't think that the water in the beads came from a meteor. In fact, and this might not really be related, but earthbound tektites are unique for their relative lack of water compared to other rocks and stuff because of the heat of the impact that forms them. And there isn't any like underground river that the meteors were stirring up or anything like that. So where do they think that the water came from? Partially from the dang sun. So solar wind is the stream of particles that flies out of the sun, and Earth's magnetosphere, whatever, blocks us from getting hit by the solar wind, but the moon's atmosphere pretty much sucks ass. So the wind hits the surface where the glass beads are. And one of the things in solar wind is hydrogen atoms, and one of the things in the moon beads is oxygen from lunar soil. So what the scientists think happens is a meteor hits the surface and it makes these little glass beads with oxygen in them, and they sit on the surface of the moon and they get bombarded by solar wind, and the hydrogen in the wind interacts with the oxygen in the bead, and it makes tiny little bits of water. And their evidence supports this hypothesis. The outside of the beads are covered in isotopes of hydrogen, matching that in the solar wind, and the beads have more water on the outside rims than when you get towards the center. So it seems like the beads on the surface are sweating out teeny bits of water all the time, and as the temperature on the moon changes, the water evaporates and travels to the poles. But there might also be tons of these beads underground still holding on to their water, making up a reservoir with possibly hundreds of billions of tons of water.
Yeah, it's gotta be tricky to get the water out of them.
Well, yeah, maybe it'd be a big pain in the ass. It's sort of hard for me to get excited about the part where it's like, well, now humans can go up and drink the water. But I do think it's pretty cool that so many weird cosmic flukes work together to make water on the dang moon. And imagine all the other crazy stuff that must be going on in space all the time.
I want to picture that these glass beads I could like put on a string and make a necklace out of them, but I bet they're really small.
I think some of them are kind of okay size, but most of them are teeny tiny, yeah.
Clearly the option is you stick all the glass beads in your mouth and kind of like suck the moisture out of them.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Like an ice cube.
This sounds like a bad idea. You got to really wash them off first, and that's going to require a fair amount of water on its own. Maybe just compressed air. You don't want to put lunar regolith in your mouth.
Well, you don't know. Do you?
It seemed to irritate the astronauts.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Like little shards.
They did not like
shards
it.
of sharp stuff. Yeah.
I think they just make them real hot and the water comes out. That's what their idea is. They just got to scoop it up.
And then you can put them on a string and have a necklace.
Yeah,
because that's very cool.
They're not going to give you any of these, Hank. I'm sorry.
I mean, eventually it won't be a big deal.
Yeah,
eventually there will be so many of them that like they'll be $3.99 on eBay. But that's will I be alive then? No. So it's all about the future. Okay, I have to choose a winner now. The winner of this week's episode of SciShow Tangents is Ceri Riley.
Oh,
I love ancient technology, especially if it's unexplained. If there's still any element of unexplained, like they knew better than they did, you know. All right, and that means that it's time to Ask the Science Couch, where we've got some listener questions for our couch of finely honed scientific minds.
At Will the Sun Card asks, why do glass shower doors sometimes explode? I worry about this all the time, especially tables. I worry about tables exploding. I feel like every glass table explodes eventually. Yeah. Is that true?
Well, I don't think so. And they seem to do it without cause.
Yeah.
So with a glass, I always thought with like a glass pane that's like part of a shower situation, it's like clamped to the house.
Right.
And if the house settles or shifts a little bit, it's like tweaking that glass and eventually it's just going to crack it. Oh. That's what I've imagined. But that's not what's happening with a table. I don't know the answer to this question.
I mean, you got there, kind of.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, it's like it happens less frequently than you probably think. I think it's like the odds of a glass thing shattering spontaneously, or not even spontaneously, for a reason, is like less than half of the chance that you're going to be struck by lightning.
No, because it happened in my brother's house.
Yeah, it happened at SciShow. Our quiz show table exploded, but I guess we spent like a decade hitting that really hard. So
that's very weird. It's like I've never heard of it happen to anyone in my. Now I do. And now I know two things. But it's usually one of three reasons. One is like structural. Like you both were saying, if there is some sort of crack or instability due to the way that it's clamped, or if there's like a physical drop on it, glass, and usually these like thin panes of glass are unstable enough that crack will like propagate throughout it. And specifically, with a lot of these furniture glasses, the way that they're made is pretty consistent. So it is a kind of glass called float glass. And this is like where you can get into the weird way that glass is made. They float molten glass on a bed of molten metal of a very low melting point, like tin, which gives the sheet very uniform thickness and a very flat surface. Then they quench the glass all at once. So it's like flat and smooth and see-through and a huge pane in the size that you want. And does
the tin get quenched at the same time?
Yes.
That seems like it wouldn't work to me, but I guess it does.
It does. And sometimes as part of that process, there are impurities depending on the metal. And so like, this is why it is the cheapest way to produce large panes of glass, but also is imperfect. And so sometimes there are intrusions into the glass of like little flecks of metal, specifically nickel sulfide inclusions in the glass. And that can affect the glass's stability over time. Like these inclusions can sometimes grow over time, or they just cause an additional stress point in the glass. And so if you have glass that was manufactured slightly less carefully or tested slightly less for breakage, then there's this higher chance that a shift or bump will then shatter it. In addition to that, most of this like float glass, after it's made, goes through like in pretty intense heating and cooling to temper the glass. And instead of shattering into big, pointy, dangerous shards, it'll shatter it into smaller flecks. That kind of fragmentation is known as dicing. You can see it with like a windshield glass, or you can see it, I don't know, in those videos where a table shatters or other things, where instead of having pointy edges, it's all rounded edges. And I think part of what makes the shattering of like a shower door so dramatic is when tempered glass shatters, it doesn't just do one crack. Right. It like goes. Like it
doesn't crack ever. It turns into like a million tiny pieces.
Right. Yeah. So instead of leaving jagged edges behind, it becomes these like relatively safe tiny pieces, which is scarier from my
like looking at it.
Door
Yeah, like if I see a crack form in a door, I'm like, oh boy, cracked that. Whereas if it's just like and just like falls down like rain, it's like, what's happening?
But it doesn't chop all your toes off.
Yeah,
is that the thought?
It's safe.
Okay. When I was growing up, they made windows, like giant windows out of plate glass that wasn't tempered, and so if you like fell through it, it's like,
it's bad.
Have a good time at the hospital. I hope you live.
Now you can jump through them all day long.
That's right. Great. It's my favorite.
And I guess the last little piece of this is that because glass is this amorphous substance, it still has characteristics of a solid, there are bonds holding things together. And so if one part gets hot and then immediately turns cold, or if one part is hot and one part is cold, then that can create like thermal shock or stress. And so in the case of shower doors, if you like blast hot water on it and then all of a sudden blast icy cold water on it, then part of the glass might be expanding slightly and part might be contracting slightly, and that's enough. And so I think that's why maybe shower doors are the most dramatic example, because there are such extreme temperature changes in that room.
Well, I'm glad to know a little bit, though. I feel like Ceri read propaganda from the glass manufacturers.
I still think 100% of glass tables will explode eventually. So,
eventually.
Yeah.
They don't flow anymore. We changed the rules. Now they just explode. Well, if you want to ask the Science Couch your question, you can follow us on Twitter at SciShow Tangents, where we'll tweet out the topics for upcoming episodes every week, or join the SciShow Tangents Patreon and ask us on our Discord. Thank you to Cascadia14 on Twitter, David Hurt on YouTube, and everybody else who asked us your questions for this episode. If you like this show and you want to help us out, it's so easy to do that. First, you can go to patreon.com/SciShow Tangents to become a patron and get access to our newsletter and our bonus episodes. And a special thanks to our patron, Les Aker. And don't forget, once we hit 700 patrons, we are going to do a Minions movie commentary, so go and subscribe. We're going to figure out what those little guys are full of. Spread the word. We have to see the piss. Second, you can leave us a review wherever you listen. It's super helpful, and it helps us know what you like about the show. And finally, if you want to show your love for SciShow Tangents, you can just tell people about us. Thank you for joining us. I've been Hank Green.
I've been Ceri Riley.
And I've been Sam Schultz.
SciShow Tangents is created by all of us and produced by Sam Schultz. Our associate producer is Faith Schmidt. Our editor is Seth Glicksman. Our story editor is Alex Billow. Our social media organizer is Julia Buzz Bazzaio. Our editorial assistant is debunked Chakravarti. Our sound design is by Joseph Tuna Medish. Our executive producers are Caitlin Hoffmeister and me, Hank Green. And we couldn't make any of this without our patrons on Patreon. Thank you, and remember, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted.
But one more thing. Across medical literature, most of the time when you read about glass and butts, it has to do with so-called foreign bodies, which is a jargony way of saying that people get a glass object stuck in their rectum and need it surgically removed.
Carefully.
However, it can be helpful for doctors to put a very thin piece of glass up your butt, specifically fiber optic instruments that can be used to image your colon or other parts of your body. But hey, this is a butt fact, so we gotta do the colon. So yes, glass and butts can be compatible, but you gotta make sure it's a technology that's meant to be there.
Wonderful. I'm having a colonoscopy soon myself.
Well, I'm glad that we could tell you a little bit more about what's going to happen.
And I'll say to the doctor, shove that glass up there. It is a whole thing. And you know that you're not the only butt that thing's been in.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, they clean it really good. They know how to do it.
You got to buy your own and bring it to them from home. Put it in the dishwasher.
Just get a garden hose and some glass.